Hello, racing fans, and welcome to round 2 of the Exiled Team Enduro Championship. We have a mini endurance 120-minute race this evening around a rain-soaked Imola. Are you surprised to hear me? Well, it's Celine from Turn1. Unfortunately, my teammate for the team championship is unfortunately under the weather with that little thing that's been going around. You might have heard of it. It's been around for the past couple of years. So please wish Natalie Lee a good well wishes and a good thought for this week. Of course, I am Celine from Turn1. I'm joined this evening by Ewan O'Leary and, of course, producer Steve from Simsport Solutions, as always, behind the cameras. And quick shout out to our sponsors this evening. Obviously, Team Turn1 providing the YouTube channel, Simsport Solutions, servers provided by SimRacing GP, the experts at JCT 600, the Exiled Racing Community, and of course, Lunatics. Thank you very much. And how are we doing this evening, Ewan?
Yeah, doing very well, thanks. Looking forward to this race a lot because the first round was very good at Silverstone. There was a lot of rain and then it wasn't raining all of a sudden in the space of 10 minutes. It happened a few times. So who knows what's going to happen tonight? It's already starting in the wet weather. So yeah, we're in for a good one.
Yep, and we might have an opportunity, maybe if we squeeze in the track hot lap really quick, maybe we can give you a quick tour before we do the grid walk as we're moving things as speedily as we possibly can. The drivers start taking green now, and we'll move quickly through that hot lap. So start finish straight here. Obviously, it's not completely straight. It is going to loop a little bit. And on the right-hander, you can see a little horse post and a exit road and brake car in turn 1. Grab those triple right curves to help the car rotate, but remember, don't get too woody as there are some very hefty sausages on the outside of that. And then down to the second chicane, the golden chicane is again, grab some of the kick lorries, try not to run too wide because this track will punish you if you go a little too far because there is sand everywhere if you take a little too many liberties with those track limits. Coming around Tulsa, the one big hairpin of the track, you're heading up to Curtella, which is probably one of the trickier corners because you are taking it at high speed. And again, put a little bit of that inside, let the wall show wide, but again, so easy to follow the track limits there. Now down to the signature Oklahoma rally corner. Again, use those trick lorries to try and get some rotation of the car. Don't run too wide as you exit and go right back up the hill. Now here's one of the trickiest corners as well, the very anti-altitude chicane, giant sausage curves that you need to negotiate, even in rather aerodynamic heavy package like the Ferrari is proceeding here. It's important to take a few liberties with your sausages, but again, don't run it onto the trying to follow those track limits so easy to do. Then finally, you're at the Rivazza, double left-hander. Again, easy to run up the sand. Don't grab too much of the sausage. Just a little bit of trick on the exits. Don't run too wide. And foot to the floor, back across the start-finish, not so straight away. And that is a lap of Imola. So it's a lot easier to do it in the dry, as you saw there, than it's going to be in the wet for these cars. But given this field and the skill they've shown so far, it should be a pretty good one. So lining up in pole position, we have the 103 car, starting with Geert Fischer. Next to them is the 105 with Kieran Pendergast. The 100 with Anders Edmondson starting off behind the wheel. Thomas Morant in the 137 will be starting off. And in the 911 car, we have William Weirich. He's going to be starting off in that car. Next to the 101, starting with AJ Jones. Henry Handy in the 28. Next to him is Guido Trampe in the 326. The 404 lines up in P9, followed by the 104, piloted by Simone Capelli for starting the race. John Cheel in the number 66, P11. Fredrickson in the 85 is going to be starting P12. Hutchinson, lucky number 13. John Jordan is going to be starting in the 197 in 14th position. Gasbergen in 15th position, and Sukandaran is going to be rounding it out in 16th position. So a little bit smaller grid, but everyone's got a buddy for this race. And given the The absolute barn burners we've had so far this season. What are we thinking, Ewan? Is it going to be another good one, or is everyone going to be extra cautious because of all the curbs and the rain and the wet, and everyone's just going to be super tentative?
Well, yeah, I think everyone is going to be cautious, but that doesn't mean there won't be mistakes, and that doesn't mean there won't be action by any stretch of the imagination. Because yeah, no matter how slowly you go, it's always going to be difficult in these kind of conditions. Very very wet out there, and as you say, it's a difficult circuit to do in the dry, really, as we just saw with that onboard lap. Very twisty, not much room for error, and the barriers are very close by to collect you as well. But you know, the wet weather is only going to add to that. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think yeah, I think people will be at least trying to be cautious early on.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be at least a little, maybe not tentative isn't the right word, but cautious on those first few laps. Make sure that you're obviously surviving. It's a long race. There's 2 hours, and obviously you don't want to hand over a wounded car to your teammate, as we saw in the first race at Silverstone. You know, with it starting wet, especially, you got to be careful on those first few laps, because you have close to an hour to go, and the last thing you want is having to be doing extra pit stops.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to be avoiding that, certainly. I mean, the ones we saw. To be fair though, we did see a pit stop made by the winning team in the end, the 137 team, to you know, end up winning the race if you make the right call on tyres. So who knows? We only know in hindsight really whether staying out or coming in was the best idea. So you know, you just got to try and do what you think is best at the time, and we'll see who rises to the top, really.
Yeah, absolutely. As you were mentioning, making that strategy call to switch tires. Unfortunately, for Natalie and myself last time, we maybe didn't quite get that strategy call quite correct. Mind you, we got caught up in one of those lap line incidents. Unfortunately, the Beckett's complex can be quite hazardous, although the double chicane here, especially with those extra sausages, can be pretty rough, as we're seeing the cars now dropping off the jacks with probably under 30 seconds to go. These guys will take their formation lap, and we'll see what happens, because something that people might not realize is even the best of the best pros, what can end up happening on your formation lap. You try and get some heat in those tires, riding those brakes, and you do a little bit of do a few pirouettes even on your warm-up lap is certainly possible, especially with tracks that are holding this much water right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you just see here that what can you see here? I mean, yeah, it's very, very murky, and there's a lot of spray hanging around as well. So this is quite high up the grid on board with the Porsche at the moment. So who knows what it's like for those right at the back, and even on the formation lap, people slowing down and speeding up to try and get heat in the brakes, heat in the tyres, or whatever, and you just can't see a thing. So yeah, it's going to be even worse when we get up to racing speed.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if I'd be brave enough to want to do a lot of weaving around right now to try and load the tires. I think I'd be mostly riding brakes, because I don't want to be that one who takes the embarrassment of spinning it on the formation lap. But absolutely, everyone trying to get some heat in the tires, and especially those cars further back is going to be facing nothing but spray. But kind of makes you wonder. We had the rain obviously in Silverstone, and very much fitting for British track and very British weather, but here at Imola, you'd think, you know, some nice southern, I'm hesitant to say South Central Europe, people might be thinking I'm referring to something else, but yeah, so I'm sure many of the drivers were hoping for slightly warmer weather, and then suddenly faced with a wet track again. I'm sure a few of them are just like, oh, here we go again. But if there's anyone who we know that can probably handle the pressure and the wet conditions, it's definitely going to be drivers like the young and talented Jared Fisher or Kieran Pendergast, who's just shown an unbelievable amount of pace regardless of the conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very stacked front row, front. I can't even say that. Front few rows is what I was trying to say. But yeah, the 103 didn't have a fantastic first round, I must say. 7th overall, 5th in the pro category. So I think a couple of wrong tyre choices on that day as well. It's hard to remember what everyone really decided to go for in that race. But yeah, there were a few who made some mistakes, certainly on the strategy. The 28 Pro car was certainly one of those as well, starting 7th here today in that BMW. So yeah, it's another chance for these guys to get it right. But you know, if these guys end up having to change tyres outside the actual pit window, then we could be in for a very complicated race.
Yeah, absolutely, and of course we'll have to see how the track evolves, and depending on how close you're getting to that window, you might even be willing to risk just running those wet tires all the way to full-blown Pirelli balloons. But as the field is now exiting the Rivazza, I'd like to just make a minor digression for everyone here and remind you, I think everyone here has heard the childhood story of Baba Black Sheep, and normally that Baba Black Sheep has 3 bags of wool. But as we're approaching the starting line here, what we're going to be seeing is that sheep has not got 3 bags of wool, it's actually got 3 bags full of boogity. As the cars are now approaching the timing line, that one's for you, AJ. So as the flagman is just ready as they're crossing the timing line now, and the green flag should be flying. And maybe still going a little bit of a cautious start, and there we go. I'm forgetting my timing placement. That's the checkered line. We're actually going for the far line for the green flag, but as the cars are now away, and everyone's of course trying to make a good position, trying to take that racing line, and everyone, and Porsche gets a little bit upset, and we see looks like an Aston going around, so a few casualties unfortunately on the opening corners.
Yeah, Willem Weinrich getting just tapped around ever so slightly, and in the end the consequences were felt quite fiercely down towards the back of the field. A number of drivers, getting things a little bit wrong through the first couple of corners, and a couple of mistakes through the Villeneuve chicane as well. But it looks like for the most part the front of the field have got away fairly clean, especially the front two. Look at Fischer and Prendergast here, absolutely flying already. Only a few corners into the race, getting away from the field already.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Fischer's made a pretty good start, although Prendergast is now trying to bring things a little bit 2x2 through Aqua Minerale, as the ranks that are making some pretty big moves until losing it, getting a little too much on that wet curb, hold the brakes, and unfortunately we thought she was going to be able to make some serious moves there, but unfortunately just getting a little too, maybe a little too aggressive off the start on those cold tires and sliding backwards. But it looks like Fischer's managed to hold that lead. Maybe Prendergast maybe just couldn't quite get that move done, or just got a little bit out of shape and couldn't quite make it stick. But it seems like we do have, even though the track is still wet, we are seeing a somewhat of a racing line develop now, as I think Fischer might have run a little bit wide there, but holding on to that lead for now, but got major pressure from Prendergast.
Yeah, the track conditions are certainly going to get drier as the rain is coming down with less frequency already. That's another bit of contact with the Porsche there. That was at the top of Piratella, at the top of the hill there. The Porsche getting involved with Willem Weinrich again, getting involved, and a spin for that BMW we mentioned a little bit earlier as well. Not a good start for a few of these guys. That Porsche especially in the wars early on.
Yeah, unfortunately, Weyer going to be trying to make up for some early mistakes, maybe getting a little bit too aggressive, and it looks like caught the back of Turn1 teammate Daniel Watkin going through the Piratella corner, just maybe getting a little too wide. And speaking of getting a little too wide, Patrick Weber running that Lexus a little too far wide into the dirt there. It looked like maybe it was in the Rivazza, as we now join the 100 car, currently driven by Truls Solberg. I believe he's passing over to Amundsen after an hour. A little further back the field than I'm sure you'd like at this point, although I think he was one of the cars unfortunately caught up in that incident right at the Tamburello chicane.
I think he was the one tipped around by the Porsche actually at Piratella we just saw a few moments ago. I think that was Solberg quite possibly, but there were so many spins for so many different drivers, kind of hard to tell. You can just see by the way the pressure being applied. Yeah, exactly. It's pressure being applied up the hill there and down the inside into the chicane. Surely this is going to be the move, although it's a bit of a squeeze. Big GT3 cars getting through a very narrow space there, but they've just about made it work.
Yep, it's not that we're going to take racing advice from Mark Alley, but nothing wrong with a little bit of bump and grind. But seems like we're going 3 wide on a very narrow track, we're steady on, and as the Lamborghini's pushed out into the wet line, and not going to be able to take the Rivazza as well as they'd like, but it seems like John Shields managed to hold that position on, at least for now. But especially with Procart being that far back in amongst the AMs, I'm beginning to think maybe this more strategically sound position would be let the pro car go and focus on the AM battles. That's not a hill you, especially as an AM driver, I'm not sure that would be the hill I'd want to die on.
I think you're right. That's what happened just there, actually, from Gio just getting out of the way, really. And that has allowed, this is probably why the Aston Martin was reluctant to let the BMW through, is because it's inviting this pressure now from Fredriksson in the Lamborghini. So we'll see how this battle continues on. But yeah, having that little bit of a buffer, the car between you, just alleviates some of that pressure. But obviously you can't keep that pro driver behind forever, especially when the AMs are starting the cars as they do in this championship.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of those things is if you're trying to defend from a pro and it's not a class position, that pro who's going to want to make up some ground, they're potentially going to start wanting to make even more and more risky moves, and that's unfortunately, if they make a risky move, then that's a chance of you having your race ruined as well if there's any sort of mistake. So it's probably John Shield deciding discretion was the better part of valor there and letting Solberg through to start making up some of this ground. But speaking of hand battles, we have Bryant here trying to challenge for that position with the 101 of Daniel Watkin. Looks like the lone Bentley running for this race. Still pretty, I'd say, still a very brave yet smart choice in many ways, because the Bentley, unfortunately, is probably not the best in the wet, but it actually is surprisingly good. That giant British frame being able to take the curves and the sausages a lot better than a lot of the other entries here.
Yeah, I've noticed in this championship the bigger cars are selected a lot more. We've only really got the McLaren, Porsche, and Lamborghini. There's only 3 cars really that are from the kind of bigger selection of cars. To be honest, I don't really quite know why that is, but yeah, it might be something to do with that. To be quite honest, it's the fact that they can hold the or take the bumps a little bit better as some of these circuits, especially this one. Out of the 3 in this championship, this one is the circuit where you use the curbs the most, as Fredriksson gets down the inside for a nice move into turn 1. I'll say that, might spoke a bit too soon, just about held on through the first couple of corners. A bit of a squeeze between the 2.
Yeah, absolutely, running very much door to door as we're seeing them head down towards the second chicane, and now rejoining actually the lead car. Kieran Prendergast apparently has gotten around Jörg Fischer and is now storming off into the lead. He's opened up what appears to be about a 5-second gap already, so Kieran Prendergast definitely making good use of that McLaren, even though it's one of the few mid-engine cars running in the field this evening.
And the Lamborghini, I suppose, yeah. But yeah, very few of them around.
Which is really quite interesting, as as much as we look at the Sims and try and replicate the real world as much as we can, it seems that the Sim, or at least for Exile right now, is tending to favor front engine cars, where Audi and Lamborghini are very much the most popular ones, at least in the real world SROs. When you've seen Brian now trying to make that move on Watkin for the position, and Watkin currently runs wide. I'm not sure if maybe that was a little bit of shove or maybe just overcooking it into the corner. But now the 100 of Solberg is very much going to be wanting to make up some of that ground and being like, hey, excuse me, teammate, mind letting me by so I can go and make up some ground?
Don't forget the 9 car that's just taken the lead, actually stole the lead on the very final lap of the Silverstone race when the leading car at the time, the 24 BMW, which isn't here today, had a technical failure with the actual equipment and got stuck in 5th gear, so couldn't downshift any longer, got stuck in 5th gear and ended up losing, it was about 10-20 seconds on the final lap to end up losing the race. It was a very heartbreaking loss for them, and the guys at the number 19 were audibly delighted when we spoke to them afterwards, as you would be.
Yeah, that's one thing that we don't often have the opportunity to replicate in the sim, is the technical failures. Although in Silverstone I had to do most of the race with a yellow engine, whatever that means. I can never remember what that's supposed to be for the sims. We're seeing a bit of a tangle further back. 4 cars in a row, looks like 12, 13, 14, by the looks of it. 12 through 15, going at it, pretty much nose to tail. 3 Astons and BMW stuck in the middle of it, as we see ranks that are trying to regain some of that lost ground after an early spin in Aqua Minerale. Although with all those Astons around, it's going to be a bit of a tough challenge as Niels and Muda are not going to be interested in giving up that position, even though it looks like the 326 is we're seeing a bit of a bend on it right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and just an interesting thing to note. Steve behind the cameras told us about this a minute ago, but the rain, as you can see, it's very dry out there at the moment, but it's going to start again in about 15 minutes. We're seeing an almost exact situation that we did at Silverstone. Do you change tyres to dryers here or not at this stage? Has anybody even done the first 10 minutes of this race on dry tyres? That would be absolutely ludicrous, I would have said, and I don't believe anybody would have done that. Surely not. But if they have, they'll be delighted right now. But no, it's going to rain again very, very soon. So a big minefield for everybody really as to what tyres to choose, because you're going to shred your tyres in these, or shred wet tyres in these dry conditions anyway. And then you're going to have no tread left by the time the rain does fall. So there's really no right answer to this conundrum at the moment.
Yeah, by the looks of it, the track state is still, I think, damp, as we're seeing the 104 really struggling now, trying to keep the car on the road. But it seems like everyone's still probably smartly going with the wet tires, as the track state is damp, as we're seeing a lot of cars actually going a little bit offline to try and use some of that non-racing line dampness to keep those tires cool. Although I would almost say it would be worth the gamble at this point, because the rain is coming back so quickly, to just stick it out on those wet tires, try and keep them as cool as possible, and conserve the tread as much as you can until it starts raining again. Otherwise, you're looking at least another 30 seconds plus entry and exit time for the pit stop. It's unless you're in a situation where you absolutely need to box in and repair some damage or something like that, it's probably worth just trying to stick it out, and hopefully you don't overcook those wet tires.
Yeah, it's all obviously, if you can do that, because it is difficult in these conditions. As Sauber gets through on Bryant there to get up into 6th position, and we've got a pit stop already. Looks like that was for Weber, maybe in the 114 coming into the pit lane, maybe to put. Well, if it is dries, then it's going to be a very, very awkward moment in about 10 minutes when it starts raining again.
Yeah, absolutely. There's you're looking at a situation where the track is now going greasy, so technically you are in a good position to put on dry tires, although with it raining again in 15 minutes, you could be shooting yourself in the foot. So where they are, it's probably worth the gamble, seeing if you can make up some positions and hoping it doesn't rain too badly. Wow. However, for everyone else who's on the wet tires right now, they're desperately looking for some moisture to keep it cool, as the track state is now evolved to greasy. So anyone who maybe was assuming that the conditions were going to stay cooler and wetter are now going to be hurting for tire temps, and I was wondering that maybe the cars right now were actually smart ones were some slightly underinflated wet tires. Try not to burn them up too much during the dry period, and then using the transition back to the wet, and hopefully trying to kind of run that gray area where the tires are kind of working for both, but not necessarily perfect.
Yeah, I mean, another thing we have to factor in here is the length of the pit lane here at Imola. It's very, very long indeed. Probably unnecessarily long, to be quite honest, but it's the way it is. And you can already see Patrick Weber, he just exited the pit lane now. He's about to go a lap down if he's not careful, because just the length of this pit lane, you've got to stop in your box, and then you change the tyres, and then get out again. It's a very, very long pit lane, and that is really going to cost you in this race, and it already has. And so, making the right calls. I think pitting the least amount of times in this one is going to be more crucial than being on the right tyre at the right time. So I think everybody else, in terms of actually staying out on the wets and just suffering through the overheating phase, has actually done the right thing here, instead of losing what is nearly a lap, which is what the 114 has just done.
Yeah, it seems that that may or may not be a wise call, but we'll see how this thing develops. But right now, Kieran Prendergast still managing to hold out to that lead, and very close to putting that 114 car on lap. And speaking of tire choice, the wets seem to still be doing okay, with Geert Fischer in the 103 setting the fastest lap of the race so far, with all purple sectors at 1 minute 46.912. I know that's Probably not as fast as we're used to seeing the GT3 cars go around here, but keep in mind it is still a greasy track out there.
Yeah, it is. This head of Ringsetter has just gone around at the first chicane, getting underway again, unfortunately. But yeah, still very, very tricky conditions out there, as we see. There's still a 4-second lead for Prendergast at the moment, which is yeah, good to see. Fantastic pace at the front from this 105 car that finished 4th in the first round of this championship, and the 103 from 7th place only in the overall standings last races. He's second at the moment, so neither of the front two cars that were battling for the race win all the way to the very end, the 137 and the 100, neither of those are actually in the top two right now.
Yes, absolutely, and we're seeing Kieran Pendergast flashing away at the 114, trying to let the lap car know, hey, I want through. This looks like Rivers maybe gone a little bit off track. Those dries haven't quite switched on yet. Is now moving to replay. It looks like, I believe this is the incident at first turn. Yeah, it looks like the 104 just went into Tamburello a little too hot, tags back the Aston, and just ended up in the sand trap on the left. But now as the 114's moved out of the way, we're now rejoining with Kieran Pendergast in the lead, although it looks like that what was a 5-second gap between him and Garrett Fisher is now dropped down to about 2.5 seconds. And winner of round 1 of the Endurance Series, Thomas Brunt, is now just kind of sitting back in P3, just keeping it nice and calm and subtle for now, and probably hoping to spring the trap at the right moment and possibly steal yet another win.
Yeah, and I do believe, by the way, that Moran is driving on his own here today. I believe I saw that a little bit earlier on. He said that his teammate wouldn't be able to attend here today, so I believe he might be on his own, but we'll find out obviously at the halfway mark. Also, we're hearing the 103 of Gert Fischer is reeling in Prendergast at a rate of maybe a second a lap at this stage, and given the rain that's about to fall, that does suggest that the 103 might be on dry tyres. Surely he didn't suffer through the very wet conditions at the start on dries, otherwise he would have been absolutely all over the place, but fair play to him if he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Although we'll have to see if maybe we can get close-up footage of the wheels on that 103 car. Maybe we'll see if we see a nice bright yellow Pirelli sticker, that might indicate that they did decide to risk it out on dries and make that move early, and whereas Pendergast might have just had that early initial grip because of tire choice. But this kind of remains to be seen, although it looks just from the camera angles we're having right now, it appears like both are on the wets, but we can't quite see. So maybe if we can manage to find somebody's diffuser cam or something like that, we'll see if we can wheel it around such that that looks, yeah, those look like the big yellow band of Pirelli. So I wonder if, so it seems like that should be actually dries, but it's been a while since I've taken a close-up look at the tires. If I remember correctly, the dries have the bright yellow, the Pirelli, but by contrast, the wet weather ones have the white band, if I remember correctly. It's, like I said, it's been a while since I looked at them, but maybe, yeah, they both seem to have the yellow banded dry weather tires. Interesting.
It's a strange, complete lack of pace all of a sudden from Prendergast. By the way, ATC really needs a better way of us knowing what tyres they're on, because this is painful. We don't know what tyres they're on or anything, and it would be nice. But either way, no, it's an interesting battle between the two, down to less than 2 seconds all of a sudden for the front of this race. And yeah, it would be, if they were on the same tyres, it would be very weird for us suddenly to just see them randomly losing, or Prendergast at least, just be randomly losing time. That would be a bit weird. So we'll see what's happened, unless tyre pressures, I suppose, as Steve says. So I'm not entirely sure quite what going on there, but it's a very intriguing battle, especially between the top and the row, and it's set up quite nicely in Pro-Am as well, with Bryant and Watkin separated by half a second right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the not only have the pro battles been interesting throughout both the solo and the team endurance championship. The AM class battles, they're definitely not looking like AM, more like higher level silver drivers for how close these battles have been and how the pace has been. But yeah, right now it seems like Watkin, who initially had the lead and just through a few small cases of bad luck and of course letting a pro-class teammate through, is now trying to regain perhaps a couple of lost positions and being all over the back of Bryant right now.
Yeah, applying a lot of pressure here to the race winners from last time around, but not able to find a way through up into Piratella. It's a very difficult way or difficult place to get through. Yeah, certainly. I'm unsure actually as to why Bryant is starting the car this time around, because he finished it in the last round, and your AMP driver is supposed to start the car in a pro-am setup. So I don't know in which race they've done that wrong, but either way, it's different to what it was this last time around.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if who's taking over, if there's maybe been a teammate change or something like that, as we're now seeing Garrett Fisher really pulling in that gap now, and as fastest lap now moves to the 137 car with Thomas Morant behind the wheel. But yeah, that gap is really closed down. I wonder if these two manage to really brave it out on in those first few laps, just keep it together for that little bit of time. Yeah, he's really managing to keep it together for those first few laps, possibly on the dry tires, and now they're pulling away, and it'd be interesting to see where they decided to run those, if it was pressures, if they decided to go with the compound and the game's just showing us the slick tires for some reason, or if there's some other factors. But at the end of the race, perhaps we'll get the opportunity to ask them.
Well, yeah, I've got some information at least on Prendergast that apparently he did start on the slick tyres, but he's only just got the temp back into the tyres after the wet period there, so it's all gone wrong. And now just about getting things back into order. But the McLaren struggling with the curbs as well, which is another factor that we do have to factor in. And you mentioned earlier about these bigger cars, maybe stronger cars can take the curves a little bit better, like the BMW and the Bentley and the Lexus, etc. The McLaren not quite as good over the curbs as those
as
cars.
The rain is starting to come down now.
Yeah, we can see the water falling from the sky once again. It's an almost carbon copy of the Silverstone race. We're seeing rain again, although I believe this is going to get heavier than it did for our first round.
Yeah, absolutely. As it's showing in 15 minutes, we're going to see even more intense rain. So as these guys initially pulling out quite a significant lead, it'd be interesting to see if those tires hold up, or if they're all of a sudden in complete panic mode now, with Fisher or possibly having some better pressures initially set up, as looks like he might make that move around the outside. Bouncing over the sausages there, a little bit of a cheeky squeeze. And 103 is off into the dirt, as loses the second position as well to Morant, as trying to make that pass. I wonder if that's a little bit of couldn't quite see from that angle, but that might be one of the ones that the stewards are going to have a look at a little bit later, as we're now seeing the 101 car with Daniel Watkin pulling into the pits.
That is going to be talked about for a very long time, I'd imagine. Prendergast and Fisher coming together there. Did Prendergast squeeze too much, or was Fisher in the wrong there? Did he spin it on his own? Was there contact? We'll have to obviously try and get a second look, but the curbs were definitely involved through the second part of that corner. There's no doubt about that. Looks like there's a lot of pit stops a little bit further down the field as the rain starts to fall. We're suspecting a lot of these teams did actually start on the slicks by the looks of things. Watkins in from second place in Pro-Am. Solberg is in from sixth place in the race. We've got Chiel and rank sitter as well. Let's have another look at this incident though. It's going to be talked about for a long time, this one, because it's a big moment in this race. Did Prendergast squeeze just too much? Well, it doesn't look like the BMW was given an awful lot of room there, I have to say.
Yeah, seems like probably also a combination of the track conditions, Fisher being extra brave trying to do it around the outside, but unfortunately just that because of, especially with the track being the green and transitioning to greasy, there might not have been quite enough grip there for the McLaren to actually stay up on the tricolore and hold. Yes, it looks like he's just, the McLaren starts sliding, it then causes the BMW to slide, and the BMW just unfortunately gets upset by those curbs, because no matter what car you're driving, you just take a little too much of that sausage curb and it's going to upset the car, and off you go.
Yeah, it's the almost exactly what we saw at the start of the F1 race here last year. But that kind of thing's kind of acceptable in F1 these days. You can just you can do what you want almost. But that's another subject for another day. But yeah, a big moment in this race. There's no doubt about that. Fisher is in, Prendergast is in also. I wonder what Thomas Morant is doing here though, because yeah, it's raining. But the more we look at that weather forecast, it was going to get very, very heavy, that rain, but all of a sudden it's showing signs of tailing off already within the next 10 or 15 minutes. So who knows what it's going to do next?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, as it looks like Thomas Moran is still out there on the dry tires trying to brave it out, and I don't know if he's going to try and hold it out for the rest of his stint on those dries, or if he's going to have to box it in because it's just going to become too undrivable. But the order is definitely really gotten shaken up at this point, with Moran being out in the lead, and all of the cars are now frantically jumping into the pit lane, probably to change tires out. Or in the case of Trempe right now, he's probably going to have to dodge a car and go in through the box, or get into the box there and repair that bonnet that's been flapping in the breeze since the start of the race.
This is the slightly troubled Porsche throughout the day already, but still going. And Porsche's very good in the wet weather conditions, let's not forget. So could rise to the fore throughout these changing weather conditions. But yeah, sticking it out on the dries by the looks of things. I think the top four are still out on the dries at the moment, trying to stick it out. But Morant has given up with that strategy. He's in already, and you'd imagine the others are going to do the same here. Yeah, the 911 is also going to do that. So everybody's going to be on wet weather tyres before long.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it might have been a little bit, almost a little bit too brave for some of these drivers who started out on slicks. Yes, he had that initial burst of speed, but it seems like now they're just, they're all having to make that extra pit stop. So maybe it might have been the smarter call would have been to start on those wet tires, just so that you could potentially leapfrog a few cars and just hope that you don't burn up those wet weather tires. But as we're seeing Geert Fischer trying to reclaim some of those positions that he lost, not only with that contact, but having to go in and change tires and possibly even repair some damage.
Yeah, absolutely. There might well be. Although we haven't seen too many cars on the wall just yet in this race, thankfully.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, I don't want to curse anyone, but thankfully we haven't seen that too much so far, which is certainly a good thing. But Prendergast is going to take second place. It looks like Brunink's has actually stayed out here in the 404. So I do wonder if somebody is just going to risk this one and try something. But he's not got a massive lead already. So we'll see how the rest of this plays out, because there's at least 15 minutes to go of these conditions. I think these guys are going to be able to get to the pit window on their dry tyres, which is going to be a relief to many.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of them I'm sure will certainly be relieved, especially as someone like myself who had to pit twice because of the wet weather conditions at Silverstone, and then again because of damage and things like that. But hopefully most of these drivers have managed to keep themselves relatively out of trouble, not too much damage, and just managing to make some quick pit stops. But as we're seeing now, stop go 30 for the 326 car. It looks like maybe a little bit of speeding in the pit lane, coming in on potentially slick tires, and suddenly you have to slow down for that pit entry and just wet track, and you just start sliding and can't quite make that pit lane speed cutoff point. It looks like we have another penalty going out, with the 85 has apparently gotten disqualified. I'm not sure what that's for. Usually you have to have some... Yeah, that's very strange. Usually a disqualification. His Turn1 teammates have a little bit of nose-to-tail contact there. I think that would be the car number 100 of Solberg and the other one.
Yeah, Stevenson just up in front in the 28. But yeah, we'll try and work out what on earth that was for. Although Fredrickson's back in the pit lane now, back in, or at least classified in the race again. So I have no idea quite what's happening there. But yeah, we've got penalties going on further down, disqualifications on the further down the field.
Yeah, that's interesting. With them being back in reclassification, I wonder if maybe there was a small game error and one of the race admins has had to stomp one of the gremlins that unfortunately plagues the simulator every so often. As we're now riding on board with the 104 car, currently driven by Heather Rangsitter in P12, trying to make the move on Jordan right now, trying to get that 11th position. As seems like a little bit of extra bravery into Variante Alta. And Rangsitter manages to get that pass done.
Yeah, nice move there. And we just on board it in the cockpit briefly there. On the obviously these cars using paddle shift, but still the driver reaching down for something. I presume that is kind of brake. Oh, it's the Lamborghini in the wall there. The Lamborghini that got disqualified a moment ago. But yeah, I presume that's kind of brake bias adjustments and stuff like that going on. The in-car adjustments will be kind of to the right-hand side of the driver, kind of where the handbrake would be in a normal car. Obviously, these don't have that either, but it kind of reaching down to that kind of area to adjust things, and you obviously need to in these conditions. Your brake bias will not be the same from a dry race to a wet one, and changing conditions like this, you need to almost be constantly going up and down on that bias.
Yeah, absolutely. This, especially with the varying altitude and the uphill and downhill sweeps that are common with Imola, you're obviously going to be making a lot of adjustments, and of course probably adjusting your ABS and traction control, given that this track went from basically a wet track all the way to green in dry conditions, and then all the way back to thoroughly soaked in rain again. Speaking of rain, it looks like it's going to be increasing again in about 15 minutes, so at least to the end of the pit window, it looks like these drivers are going to be stuck running in wet weather conditions for the next little while, as we're seeing looks like the Guido Trempe has decided that he's going to pull it into the garage after stop-go 30, and damage early on in the race has probably decided that you know what, this is getting to be a little bit too much of a gross comedy of errors, so we're going to just pull it in the garage and call it a day, as we're now back riding with car 103 and Kurt Fisher, who's now falling back to about that 5-second gap again to Kieran Pendergast in the 105.
Well, slowly reeling Prendergast in though, now below 5 seconds. 4 tenths was taken out last time around by this BMW, so that gap is only coming down at the moment. Just wonder quite why that is. I think it's just a little bit of a disparity between the drivers and how comfortable they are out there at the moment, really. There's definitely no tyre difference between them. They're all on the wet weather tyres at this point. We know that for an absolute fact, because almost everybody's come in here. But yeah, this is good driving at the moment from Fisher to be bringing this gap down. These two, the fastest two in the field, really. But yeah, Fisher just ever so slightly quicker than Prendergast for now. Yeah, these two getting away from the rest of the field. Looking at some of the gaps further down there, yeah, extending massively already.
Yeah, it looks like that gap management is going to be key here. As it looks like the gap now between Pendergast and Fisher is now opened up a little bit. I wonder if maybe Pendergast is just kind of keeping a quick eye on it and just saying, if I keep it in roughly this area, I don't have to push too hard, and it gives him a little bit of breathing room so that he can kind of gauge where he is, check on it, keep an eye on the tires, keep an eye on fuel, and that sort of thing, so that he doesn't necessarily have to pull out this insanely commanding lead, but instead just manage it and make sure that you can bring that car home and hand it over to, I believe, Oscar Sandberg, who's going to be next in that car for, just have a manageable gap for when that pit window opens.
Yeah, absolutely. But Fisher going to be handing over his car as well. So yeah, we'll see who's the best out of the next matchup of drivers, I suppose. But for the moment, it looks like Fisher's got the edge over Prendergast. Just got to find a way through, really. And I guess at post-race we're going to find out the findings of what went on at Turn 1 when they last came together. Hopefully they don't come together like that again. But you never know really what's going to happen between the two of them, because there's certainly going to be a little bit of kind of a score to be set up there, especially for Fisher. He's going to want to get through, certainly after he will feel he was wronged at Turn 1 last time.
speaking of coming together, the gap between the 911 and the 28 is definitely closing down, and Chris Stevenson actually doing really well here this evening, managing to bring that 28 BMW close to that 911 Porsche driven by Willem Weirich, who's probably not having the greatest race right now, especially being caught up by a lot of the Turn1 teammates right now. And normally, obviously, Wilhelm being very much in a leadership role over at Turn1 is probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed right now with that the Porsche not necessarily being most suited to Imola compared to the very long front engine BMW, which really seems to be coming into its own here. Although, speaking of engines not being in the front, though, Kieran Pendergast still very much in the lead in McLaren, although probably one of the longest wheelbases in the game. So I'm beginning to wonder if maybe, especially with the rain and the as Stevenson gets a little bit sideways, as I was saying, it seems like with the wet weather conditions and the general bumpiness and abrasiveness of Imola, that the longer wheelbase cars are just a lot more comfortable around here, whereas the much more narrow, much more nimble Porsche, although it does have its traction benefits, is maybe not quite necessarily loving the Imola right now, just because of obviously the less stability you have with that narrow wheelbase.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar Sandberg is fighting his teammates' corner at the moment for the McLaren, saying how hard it is at this circuit, and I certainly do believe that. From watching the first few moments of this race, the BMW looking very strong, and obviously we talked about the curbs a little bit earlier on as well being important. We've seen them actually affect Fischer in a much more negative way. Actually, a little bit earlier on, the bounce across the curbs at turn 2 was basically what sent him round, I think. So there can be too much curb even for a BMW. Yeah, we'll see what happens when they next come together. But there's still over 4 seconds between them, and they might not even come together as they are the two drivers in that car at the moment. You know, only 14 minutes until pit window opens. Just remains to be seen how far they're going to take this one, because they do have the possibility of staying there for more than half an hour even still in this race. 50 minutes to go is when the pit window closes. I just wonder if they're going to stay out there a little bit longer, just to see, is it going to dry up before we get to that 50-minute mark? Because if it is, then you do want to be staying out there for as long as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That was something we were thinking about as well for the Silverstone race, is making sure that you're going to have try and not have to have yet another change of tires or another pit stop, especially after that window is closed. So yes, interesting, as we a little remark from Oscar Sandberg, who's in the chat right now waiting to take over from Kieran Pendergast, is a little bit of shots fired to some of the aliens who do drive the McLaren and often complain that McLaren is not the greatest around bumpier tracks like Imola, basically saying McLaren is fine, it's no big deal, don't worry about it. So especially for guys like James Baldwin, it's like you've one of your peers is actually saying, "Man, it's not that bad. What are you complaining about?"
Well, I think compared to the I think he's saying compared to the BMW it might be, but either way, it's hard to tell through chat, to be quite honest, what people actually think about it. Obviously, these drivers know a bit more, certainly know more than me. Since they're the one in the driving seat and know what's happening, and obviously they'll be talking to their driver about the conditions at the moment. Although it does look like Prendergast is just stemming the tide a little bit, if you don't mind the water pun there, of Fischer up front. 4.5 seconds. He was getting reeled in earlier, but he's starting to just make a name for himself and starting to just hold back the charge of Fischer. A low 50 from him. The lap times are coming down ever so slightly. We'll see what Fischer can do over the line here. A mid 50. So yeah, Prendergast does just put a couple of tenths into the 103.
Yeah, it looks like very much, if anyone remembers how in going to something like yes, we actually see a little bit of a Tokyo drift going on, or in this case, Emilia-Romagna drift going on there. If anyone remembers watching NASCAR in Jeff Gordon's heyday, you'd often not necessarily see him try and pull out those absolutely massive gaps, but actually just gap management, making sure he's got room there to change things like, has to do a tire stop or a splash and dash, and just making sure that it doesn't necessarily have to be this insurmountably, but just enough that so that you can get the things like those pit stops done, or in this case, do the car handover in that pit window. So probably not necessarily trying to push as hard as he possibly can, gearing kind of gas, keeping it nice and calm, managing that gap, and trying to keep it in such a state that when he does do the handover, the Oscar Sandberg, he can come back out comfortably in the lead. But as we're now moving back into the battle for 11th place, as we're following the 187 and the 404, looks like the gap is fairly consistent now, as the 187 runs a little bit wide in the Rabats. It's so easy to do. You overrun your brake marker, especially with the wet conditions. And, well, here you go. Here, have a position for free.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, that has happened there for George. It's very, very tricky as you come through the kink at 16 there, the right-hander, and you have to get into Ravazza, the left-hander, and braking while you're turning almost in the wet. It's very, very tricky to get the car slowed down. Unfortunately for Jordan, he's lost a position because of it, but right back onto the tail of the 404 once more, though. A little bit of a mistake there because they opened up a few car lengths. Briggs is more recently out the pit lane than this 187. I doubt that's making too much of a difference between the two at the moment, but that mistake down at Ravazza certainly did that, although it is very, very easily done. As mentioned, downhill braking while turning in the wet, it doesn't get much more difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. With a situation like that, you want to be considering, obviously how the braking zone works. It's downhill, it's in the wet, and it's almost like you want to consider that maybe pressure your opponent into making that mistake rather than trying to make the overtake on the entry and doing it yourself. But as we're now moving back to your Fisher for the 103, maybe trying to close that gap, as it looks like it's gone down to about 3.3 seconds, as we're getting a little bit of sideways in the Paratella. I mean, you can do that in the dry, so not too much of a concern in the wet, as you'd be even more expecting to do that. But Fisher, again, putting on the charge, trying to regain some of that ground. Kind of makes me wonder, is this, again, just some more gap management by Pendergast, or is maybe Fisher kind of gotten it together and is now able to mount a bit of a charge? But interestingly enough, that rain's going to keep coming, and that track is going to stay wet as the Lamborghini ever so slightly overstepping the marks. But despite having a little bit of an off in the wall into Aqua Minerale, that Lamborghini is, even though it's holding the wooden spoon right now, is definitely trying to make a comeback.
Yeah, I think Fredriksson is one of those who's expected to make the most progress, quite possibly in this next 8 minutes or however long it decides to stay in that car at the moment. Going forward, because that Lamborghini was running in the mid part of the Pro-Am field before all of the it all went wrong basically, and dropping down now, but able to get back on the road at least and try and move up some of these places. Kasbergen first, see if Fredriksson can get through here. It shouldn't be too difficult really, judging by the pace of that Lamborghini right now. Looks fairly strong. And that Lexus you just see in the foreground there is the next car on the list as well for 13th. So a couple of cars waiting to be overtaken here really, and it shouldn't take too long for the 85.
Yeah, the Lamborghini actually doing really well, and unfortunately just having that small off in Aqua Minerale, and then of course that slight issue for mysterious disqualification, which we're not quite sure of. Again, it's probably just some kind of bug in the sim or something happened. As the Aston, again, making the same mistake in Ravazza, just getting going in a little bit too hot, especially for the conditions, and even though there's a little bit of drifting by the Lamborghini, just hitting its marks otherwise pretty much perfect, and making that position up with just proper run through the Ravazza. Although it looks like the Aston Aston in the wet things managing to make a bit of a comeback here. We'll see if maybe they can make it happen around the outside, or nope. Fredriksson just has the better position in given these conditions and drive from the lap. Oh, as Lexus is going around and collects the Aston. I don't think that's necessarily a fault of Weber. It just probably lost it on the zone by the looks of it, and the Aston in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yeah, it looked like that spin was going on for quite a long time actually for the 114, and unfortunately collected Kasbergen
and that's a shame for both of them. Nice for Fredriksson to be able to make up 2 places so easily, but yeah, not what you want to see as the leaders come over the line again. There's 3 seconds between them, and almost matching each other, you know, on lap times last time around in this one. So they're running very, very close to each other in these wet weather conditions. Lap traffic, of course, playing a role now as well, as we look at a replay of that incident with St. Caspergen spinning around.
Yeah, it looks like the Lexus is just going through Tamburello pretty much as normal and just gets maybe a little on the power a little too soon. Benjamin just dive it out of the way. 114 is trying to bring it back around, gets on the grass and lights up the tires. Yeah, unfortunately, not intentional, but I think the steward might have to have a look at that as possible unsafe region, because lighting up the tires when you're on the grass and there's cars coming by, maybe the smarter thing to do would be to hold the brakes. Yes, as we're moving back through the leaders now, Fisher really pushing to try and get dispatch that lap traffic out through Minerali. It's like, at this point, it's like you're screaming blue flags in your microphone, and unfortunately it's not going to be Michael Massey listening to the other end. It's hashtag emissions. But yes, as he manages to get past the back marker and chase after Prendergast, who, interestingly enough, the gap has come down again by another few tenths, as although the traffic is probably more going to be the cause for that than anything else. Is sure maybe getting a little bit sideways, but managing to keep control of the car. As everyone seems to be having some issues through the Wata, and it's not contained to any particular driver or one of the classes. Even the pro cars are having a little bit of trouble, bit of a struggle, at least right now, with the track in full wet and the rain actually increasing within the next 5 minutes before it starts to taper off.
Well, yeah, as I said earlier, it's just a very, very difficult little section, really. Those final couple of corners, you have to turn through that corner and then brake while going downhill, and obviously gravity working against you there, of course. It's a very sharp corner with no room for error. So yeah, it's no surprise really that people are running off the road quite so easily down there, but it happens, and that's what we've seen on a few occasions so far in this race. But yeah, we'll see if it gets any easier, really, if it gets any drier in this one, as we see a replay of car 28. Stevenson has gone for a spin through the chicane, over the curbs, and we said the BMWs can take them well. Well, no car can take quite that much curb, and that's a case in point there.
Yeah, it looks like got a little bit too far to the right over the double sausage, and instead of taking the track cut with it being wet, it's just full on spin there. Because as you can see, the 103s now goes through the same corner Variante Alta as there's that second mini sausage there next to the larger arced one that you're just unfortunately, if you get a little too greedy with those, especially when they're all rain soaked and whatnot, it's just so easy to lose it. There's I don't know, I'm wondering if maybe especially with some of these cars and with Fisher, with the way the rear end tends to be stepping out a little bit, I wonder if he's managing to get a little bit of that extra rotation, but running that brake bias a little further back than some others who are overshooting Rabatsa, although yes, they're overshooting it and maybe playing it a little bit safe with the brake bias further forward, as you were mentioning earlier with the in-car adjustments. But if you run it forward, you run the risk of overshooting. But also, if you run it a little too far back in conditions as wet as these, there's a good chance you might end up losing the rear end. Which, if you're facing backwards and staring at oncoming drivers, in many ways, it's just it's very much worse.
It's not good, as we see. The gap only a second between the two leaders at this stage. The McLaren continually getting reeled in at this stage. Fisher, surely it's a matter of time before getting through. Prendergast is not going to let this one go easily, and the 103 is not going to allow itself to get shoved out as it did last time and go for a spin. So this could be a very heated battle between the two of them. We don't really know what the outcome of any investigation that might come from that first incident, whether there is actually going to be anything in that. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of tension between these two, a lot of unsaid tension, and yeah, who knows what's going to happen this time. It's going to be a very exciting battle.
Absolutely. It's at this point, they've been side by side, not only on lap one, but also into Tamburello a number of laps later as things were starting to transition into the wet portion of the race. And now with that gap being reeled in, it's going to be interesting to see if that gap management is going to be a continuing factor, or maybe the reason the gap kept was fluctuating so much is maybe Fisher was getting a little too greedy and making a few mistakes. So, but it'd be interesting to see as that gap just keeps being reeled in. Looking over at the pit wall, and I currently do not, unfortunately, see who's currently holding the fastest lap at the moment. In the sim, it's still showing it's Thomas Grant with that not changing, obviously, because of the wet conditions. So, say that, based on the last lap time, it's close to 6/10 now. So, Fisher is definitely on the charge.
Yeah, he is at this stage. Traffic once again playing a role here in this one. The last car on the lead lap ahead of Ranksetter, I think this is, in the 104, just in front of Prendergast, trying to get out of the way, trying to stay, try not to get involved with this lead fight, I think. There we are, pulling to the outside line and getting out of the way nicely. And trying to get out of the way, and the fellow BMW just behind as well. But only 9 cars on the lead lap at this stage. It's been a very, very positional race so far, and there's been a lot of things going on. That was nearly another one of them. Fisher nearly getting into the back of that BMW there, the 104, but thankfully everybody just avoiding contact.
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, contact was avoided, although at that point, I think it might have been the smartest thing to do would have just been to lift and let both cars go, because right now there's a situation where, it's wet, it's going to be even more treacherous offline, and trying to run side by side into the braking zone is just... it's not the most advisable thing, especially when it's teammates in the dry, because there's a chance of there being contact and being an incident. And the last thing you want to do is be sending a teammate around, especially if you're one of the teammate who's the back marker. So especially now when it's in the wet, I think the smarter call would have been to just lift, let them both go, and then get back on the power. Whereas trying to orchestrate things into the corners is probably just a little bit too sketchy at this time.
Yeah, that is true. But the lap cars, of course, are always entitled to a race of their own as well. So they don't really want to lift out the battles that they're in. Ranksetter obviously trying to break into the podium positions at the moment in that Pro-Am category. So don't really want to lift out either. It's a real game of cat and mouse, really. But speaking of cat and mouse, there's about to be some of that at the front now between Prendergast and Fisher. Been building this battle up for a long time, and it's finally upon us. The pit window is open, so they might even take it away from us as well. But let's hope not. Let's hope that these two do fight it out on the track. They've got nearly 20 minutes until they have to get out of the car.
Yep, they're going to have 18 minutes 30 seconds as of now as they're going through the Curtella, and seems like at this point they might even be feeling a little bit like, especially with Fisher probably feeling like, I've done all this work, I don't want to have to give up the car now and not get all of the way through this. Is actually seeing Weber, who's currently limping that Lexus around at the back now, is just completely lifts out, and that's the two of them go. But pretty much nose to tail now as they're exiting Durante Alta and heading towards the Ravazza.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a late-breaking move here. It'd be very brave from Fisher to go for it here, and decides not to, fortunately. Go through the final corner now. Let's see. Is anybody going to duck into the pit lane here or not? They both decide to stay out. Don't forget, by the way, there's a mandatory tyre change in this pit stop window. So no matter whether they have to switch compounds here because it's drying up, or whether it's going to continually stay wet, they will have to change all 4 tyres, I believe it is.
Yep, they're going to have to do a full tire swap, and it says both in 5 minutes and in 15 minutes the rain will reduce, but it's not going to be completely gone. So it will be interesting to see, because they're going to want to be holding on as long as they can, not only for this battle, but they're certainly going to be thinking that, well, let's see what as we get closer to that window, what's the weather going to do? Is it going to potentially rain even more? Is it going to actually start abating? Are we going to have to potentially think about gambling it onto the dry tires? or just keep it pretty much status quo. So right now, because they have 16 minutes and 3/4 left right about now, they're going to be thinking to themselves, okay, well, it's still going to be raining, the track is wet, and even if it does get light, chances are that the track is not going to dry out enough for the switch to dry tires. So we're going to have to wait and see. And of course, the teammate's going to be keeping an eagle eye on those weather conditions as Pendergast and Fisher now have to fight it out for the lead as yet another bit of traffic is coming up as they're approaching Variante Alta.
Now, if I was Prendergast, I would be tempted at least to make a bit of a gamble here. Obviously, we were saying earlier on, we've got to stay out for as long as possible to try and see what the weather conditions are going to be through this pit stop window, and that is all true. However, we kind of know what the conditions are going to be like until the end of the window now. We know it's going to be wet until the very end of the window, so if I was him, I'd be getting on the new wet tyres now, trying to get a bit of a gain from that, because obviously it's going to be better than the old ones that Fisher's got at the moment. Get Sandberg in the car, try and drill out some very, very quick lap times on new wet tyres, try and get a bit of a cap, because at the moment the situation they're in, if they do the same thing as this BMW, they're going to have a very tall order to defend for another hour and 5 minutes. They're not going to be able to get away from the BMW very easily in the situation they're in. So they're just going to be defending all day long, which is very, very hard to do, as they are right now. But I will be in here at the moment to see to get some new tyres on and try and pull a bit of a margin. If it gets dry later, then that's fine, because the BMW will have to come in as well, and then everybody will all be making another stop. So if I was Prendergast, I would be tempted to take a bit of a gamble.
Yeah, obviously the gamble is going to be very tempting, but I don't think knowing these two, especially being Turn1 teammates, these two just they'll not want to blink. They'll want to sort this out on track as much as possible, and also both their teammates, they're going to be saying it's like, keep going. I want to keep an eye on this on the weather, because just happening to know them both personally, they're just not going to want to concede this, and they're going to not want to be the one to blink first. So thankfully we have a little bit of insight, even though in the case of if we were watching Formula One live, Bono would be screaming to do this or do that, or Lewis coming back with, no, I want to do this instead. But right now I think very much these two are not going to want to be the first ones to blink, see where things are going to pan out. And it looks like rain is going to remain very much status quo. No, it has ticked over. It's going to increase. The rain is going to increase now. So looks like the final factor has played his hand. So now they're going to be talking about when they want to stop. If somebody wants to will want to make that first pit stop and potentially get that undercut in.
Very, very close through the final couple of corners between Prendergast and Fisher there. They were side by side briefly.
And
Fisher
maybe trying it around the outside again.
Yeah, looks like a replay almost, doesn't it? Around the outside through turn. Oh, he backs out this time. But once again, if he did try to go around the outside there, he would have definitely been over the curbs in a very similar way.
Yeah, it looks like Pendergast has the car perfectly positioned, is making Fisher do all the work and potentially having to risk losing the position again, because as we saw in the replay, I don't think there was any sort of suspect driving going on there. It's just the McLaren up on the tricolore as you would normally do, and obviously with things being a little bit slick, a little bit wet, and they were on dry tires at the time, the car just naturally washes out a little bit, and Fisher was just not in a good position. Maybe if it was the Mercedes on on something like an Aston Martin in the Formula One, where there's just such a tremendous pace advantage between the two cars, that would be different. But with these homologated GT3 machines, trying to stick one around the outside is just a really tall order. It is a very difficult order, but I do think that he could be given a little bit more space on occasion, I must be honest, because it's difficult to go side by side anyway at Imola, especially when you're battling with the BMW. It's very big, and the McLaren's quite wide, so I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more space given between the two. But these guys battling hard after all, and it is going to be for a race win as well, you'd imagine, after all this. 19 seconds down to Morant at this stage. And he's doing all the driving in that car today, so he's going to be pretty tired at the end of it. Don't think he's going to be getting involved in this unless something goes catastrophically wrong for these two. So it is a two-horse race at this stage, and they don't want to give an inch. But Prendergast is defending aggressively for now. Yeah, and speaking of Thomas Moran, he's currently holding the fastest lap. If he's going to be driving this one solo, unfortunately, I think he's going to be facing a 20-second penalty. And if you do have to solo it, there's a small price to be paid for the bravery of running solo, which is actually part of the reason why I'm here in the commentary booth this evening. Obviously, with Natalie Lee being out because of illness, and I honestly, I wasn't wanting to go through the fatigue of driving for 2 hours and then yet only to get at least one penalty for being solo. But looks like, speaking of Murat, he's now in the pit lane, probably deciding now is the perfect time to change those tires, since he's basically going to be going for it another hour by himself. And with the rain only increasing in the next 15 minutes, it's like, now's the time to change those tires. We'll wait to see who decides to pull the trigger and swap over to their co-driver next.
Yeah, Moran only the second driver to come in during the window, I think, here at the moment. By the looks of things, we have actually seen Sturken Duran get into that car, into the 114, instead of replacing Patrick Faber a few minutes ago. So we have got a driver stop there and a drive-through penalty for Gert Fischer for some reason.
Yeah, I wonder if that seems very odd. That must have been a drive-through for exceeding track limits. Although, given the conditions, I'm surprised that those track limits would have to be quite egregious if that's the case, especially in weather circumstances. And make sure you get it slowed down there. You don't want to be taking a double drive-through for speeding in the pit lane, especially at a place like Imola. So the battle, at least for now, is sorted. Prendergast is going to just keep it going for the next little while, as Fischer is going to have to serve that drive-through. That might even be enough time for Solberg in the 100 to catch up and possibly even take that second position.
Yeah, and where's Moran going to be in all of this when this all shakes out? Obviously, he's taken the driver change. Stevenson, has he got out of that car, Stevenson, at the moment? Not yet, but might well do in a moment. Fischer goes for that drive-through, and we won't find out actually where he comes out in relation to Solberg, because that 100 car he's in as well. So a few things to shake out over the next 10 minutes certainly, but that's going to be very, very hurtful and damaging to the 103's race in this one really, because as we mentioned earlier, very, very long pit lane here. But I think you're right, it is drive-through for track cuts. He was coming out of that chicane, the Variante Outer, 14 and 15 there, when he got the drive-through, wasn't he? So that is one of the places where you would get a penalty, I suppose. So you are right, it's for track limits.
Yeah, it's so easy to run a little bit too far over that first entry sausage, or if you run out with it, taking too much of that right-hander. If you go a little bit wide, especially onto the triple sausage on the exit, it's especially in the dry, it's very easy to just start accumulating track cuts there. But with things being the wet, I'm surprised. I'm genuinely surprised that to get that many track cuts in the wet. So there must have been a significant advantage gain on multiple occasions for him to be getting those. And yeah, it looks like he's being really grabbing a lot of that inside right-hand sausage. So yeah, it looks like maybe even in spite of the conditions, Gert being a bit of a naughty boy.
Yeah, pushing the limits certainly. And sometimes, I mean, in my experience anyway, the wet weather conditions actually take me towards track limit violations a little bit more, just through pure lack of control. I'm sure these guys have got more control than me in a car. That's why I'm here. But I find it very difficult to stay within the track limits, to be quite honest, when the wet weather conditions are around. So I see what you mean about not being. I take your point about not pushing the boundaries as much with those, because you're more focused on getting the car around really, rather than really pushing the boundaries. And obviously you're not using. Obviously a little bit slippery offline as well, so you don't want to be using all of the road all of the time. It gets a little bit sketchy, but at the same time, the lack of grip can take you towards doing that as well, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that with the grip being very much at a premium, you're stuck in a position where it's so easy. Especially you take the excessive amounts of curb, or you maybe get over the sausages a little bit more, and it's so easy to have those off track. But in many cases, because it's so easy to lose time as a result of those, like you said, I was surprised that he was getting the track limits violation, just because you think going off a line like that is. We see Duran just jumping out of the way to let Fisher go through Aqua Minerale. But yeah, it seems so easy to lose time offline, especially with in the wet, because obviously on the racing line you have the most grip, and as soon as you step off of it, it's so easy to lose time. I'm genuinely very surprised that he managed to get that. But moving on now, it seems that Pendergast and Fisher are still very much in their positions, although I think Pendergast has now got a very comfortable lead, and also still has yet to make his pit stop, and Fisher still hasn't gone in, as we're now looking at about 5 minutes 45 left in the pit window. So everyone knows where things are going to end up in about 15 minutes. So rain is just going to increase in 5 and increase again in 15. So we know where things are going, and these guys need to be planning their pit stops within the next lap or two.
Yeah, everybody's just waiting really for the end, as we expected. Ryrick is in at the moment, but yeah, was off the road in the background there was Durant. But yeah, Fisher just trying to reel the McLaren in as much as possible. Another half a second on the last time round, but 36 seconds is the margin, and that is a huge gap to be closing down in only 55 minutes of racing on a driver like Kieran Pendergast. You're not going to be able to do that, in my opinion. It's too big of a margin. They're just a step too far, but you never know if there's going to be a mistake, I suppose, from the 105. That's all he can hope for at this stage.
Yeah, at this point, it's very much down to Kieran Pendergast and Oscar Sandberg to bring it home, and it also depends on traffic and what Garrett Fisher's co-driver is going to be able to do, although that co-driver is going to be very much itching to get behind the wheel of that car, because at this point it's like, okay, the car's had a drive-through for warnings, and at this point it's just kind of like, okay, not time to make that switch over, as it looks like pretty much everyone but the top three now has made that change. So far Pendergast, Fisher and Watkin are the only Stint 1 drivers still out there, as I believe strangely the 187, I'm pretty sure they have gone through or should have gone through a driver swap, but maybe they haven't fulfilled the rest of the pit stop requirements. I wonder if maybe they forgot to change tires or something.
Yeah, or they changed not enough tires, or that's the only other mandatory thing, isn't it? You've got to change driver, of course, but the mandatory tyre change is what allows that little green box next to the number to appear. So yeah, I mean, it's got to be the tyre change for the 187. Alex Gutting is not going to be very pleased about that, and he's probably going to lose a place at least to Morten Urgaard, who's taken over the Lamborghini, maybe even Joran Jongen as well in the 325 Aston Martin. If that pit stop takes a very long time, then the 187 may fall behind him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much. I'm not sure if we want to call it a team error, but we might as well spread the responsibility evenly. If you want to fulfill the pit stop requirements, that both the driver swap and the tire change needs to happen, and they take about the same amount of time. So there was no time saved there. So you would think that, absolutely, you're going to have to change those tires. You're not getting any time savings. So that 187 car is going to have to box it in again if it wants to meet the pit requirements. Otherwise, they're facing quite a hefty penalty, if not outright disqualification, for not meeting the pit stop requirements.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is actually going to do when we hit the 50 minutes to go mark. Is it going to disqualify them at the end, or just straight away? I'm not entirely sure, but because I've never been in this situation before, I've never seen anybody just disregard the rules. I'm sure they haven't disregarded the rules, but you know what I mean. They've made a mistake somewhere along the line, and yeah, it's going to cost them as Gert Fischer gets through on a lap. Is that the 187 maybe going in? Yeah, it is. I think they're rectifying their mistake now.
Yep, that would be the 187. So they've realized what they've done. Maybe they're even listening to our conversation, realizing we better box it now. Otherwise, we're going to be in a seriously bad situation, and the last thing we want is to be disqualified. So, yeah, it's the leaders now as Watkin maybe running a little bit afoul of track limits. Although I imagine it being quite slick out there, and you'd be losing a lot of time. Yeah, the 105, the 103, and the 101 definitely need to be making their pit stops now if they want to have it happen, because there's not going to be enough time to do another lap. So they're going to be getting called in by the teammates, and not just like now's a good time, but actually like we need to do it right now, this lap, as they're not going to have time for another.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the case for these guys. Prendergast coming towards the final couple of corners now. He's done exactly what we said at the start of the day about it's staying out for as long as possible, seeing what the conditions are going to do, and then deciding what to go for. It does mean Oliver Sandberg gets a little bit less time in the car, but it's not much as Prendergast comes in now, and Fisher is going to do the same in a few minutes' time. Decided not to go with my, and it was a good idea to not go with my slightly bold strategy of pitting early, because the way I saw the race going was they were going to have to hold off this car for a whole 65 minutes at the time, but this drive-through has really taken a lot of pressure off of them, and it would have looked, in the end, it would have looked very silly for them to follow my advice, so thankfully they didn't.
Yep, as Prendergast is in now, I'm going to be handing over the car to Oscar Sandberg. Daniel Watkin is in the 101, and he'll be handing off to AJ Jones, as we're seeing now Fisher making it in with about 23 seconds remaining, and he will be handing off the car, as well as we now see Thomas Moran is looks like he's just heading through the Paratella now, so don't know that he's necessarily going to gain a position. He's far enough back that I don't think he's going to be stealing anyone's positions as of right now, but running it solo so far, managing to show some incredible focus and poise, and just keep that car on the track and still being in the top 5.
Yeah, Oscar Sandberg leads the pit there. I realised I said Oliver Sandberg, by the way. That's not even right. Oscar Sandberg, excuse me, taken over in the lead of this race, and it may well be Thomas Moran in second. We'll have to wait and see over the next couple of moments. But if you remember that drive-through penalty for Gert Fischer, it really could cost him not only a chance at the win, but also second place to this 137 car.
Yep, as the 137 is now coming through the Rivazza and down the start-finish straight, as they swap over to Stavros Konstantinidis, who's going to have to be trying to get out as fast as he can, but obviously you don't want to take a speeding into pit lane, and especially with cars like the BMW that's got such an abrupt first gear, it's easy to want to just go through the motions and jump up into second, but that is definitely not what you want to be doing, as it looks like that position has changed. Thomas Moran up into P2 because of not only the pit stop for the 103, but that drive-through penalty that Fischer took at the beginning of the pit window.
Yeah, it's really hurt them in this one. Where's the 100? The 100 is a little bit further back, actually, from those guys. We'll be able to find out soon as to just what the gap is. But Konstantinidis has, did a decent job in the second half of the first race at Silverstone. So looking to bring this one home for a podium. We'll see if it makes any inroads into Moran as well. But yeah, big gap at the front of the field for the McLaren, and it's going to be very, very difficult for Sandberg to lose this one, you can imagine.
Yeah, it's all Oscar really has to do is just keep it nice and calm and clean and bring it home, whereas Konstantinidis has got a bit of a tall order in catching Thomas Moran, but not quite as tall as the order as he had at Silverstone, where if viewers recall, last time out he was actually faced with a stop-go 3 because Fischer was dinged for speeding in the pit lane at Silverstone, and if any of you recall, he was actually right behind me when he did it, so as I was braking down and hitting the pit lane speed limiter pretty much spot on, so with Fischer suddenly diving out of the way and flashing through my mirrors on the entry, it was very much a clean-cut case of just taking that Silverstone pit entry a little too hard. So yeah, by the looks of it, gap is not quite as big as we thought, perhaps in around the 10-second mark, if I saw that correctly, although ACC sometimes doesn't always give me the clearest picture. But and actually, speaking of bringing the gap down, the 100 car involved in those early opening lap dramas, but the recovery drive is very much on now with Anders Edmondson in fourth position, taking over from Joel Solberg. Those two drivers showing remarkable poise and determination, bringing it all the way back to P4.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a good drive from them, and a decent time of things. Last time, of course, nearly held on for the race victory at Silverstone. So, yeah, it was Solberg to finish the race on that occasion. Amundsen's going to finish it on this time. So, a second and a fourth to start off the season is not bad, but it's also not quite as good as the first and the second, which is currently on course for Thomas Moran in the 137 car, the Bulls car. So, yeah, they're certainly going to be a little bit behind them heading into the final round at Suzuka, but either way, it is a nice place to start with second and fourth.
Yep, doing remarkably well, especially with Thomas Brandt being in the car solo, and then just see where the gap is now. It looks like it's about 15 seconds between Brandt and Konstantinidis with the 103, and then of course Amundsen another 10 seconds behind them in the 100. So cars are pretty much have a little bit of air to themselves, but it's so easy, as we've seen cars maybe running a little too hot into Rivazza, as we're seeing Morant go through that right now, or in the case of Fischer, just taking a few too many liberties, even in the wet with the track limits. Mistakes are very much a lot more likely to occur because of the adverse conditions. And even though the rain is easing up, and in 15 minutes we're actually going to overcast, it'll be interesting to see where things pan out, because with the cloudy conditions, and if the temperature stays very much the same with cars being a little more spaced out, who knows, we might see a possible change into drier conditions, but with no sun and the cars being a little more spaced out as they are, it might not necessarily get dry enough for that last minute track conditions change to shake things up.
Well, yeah, there's still going to be half an hour to go before that overcast condition kicks in. So I certainly think there's time for us to get onto dry tyres before the end of this race. And I was just wondering, or thinking to myself, Oscar Sandberg is kind of running out of places to lose this race, even with 45 minutes to go. But that is certainly one of them. In a drying track with wet tyres still on, then having to get down onto pit lane with not ideal tyres, making sure you don't speed there. 24 seconds of a lead. It is comfortable for the moment, but the drying conditions certainly is one of those places where you can lose the race, and he's going to have to be careful and try and not do that, obviously.
Yeah, and especially it's not a question of what will the track dry up. It's at what rate the track is going to dry up, because depending on how things pan out, and especially when things is Aston losing it a little bit and Stavros having to take avoiding action. But hopefully they managed to keep that Aston off the wall and not bob the nose again. But absolutely, with moving to overcast conditions, it's not a question of will the track dry up. It's at what rate is it going to dry up. And if you're able to keep decent pace and keep those dry tires on, you can probably bring it to the end. They might be a little overinflated and a little hot at that point, but are you going to lose more time in the pits trying to swap over to the dries? Whereas, and especially with Morant, he's probably not going to be one to make that gamble, but Stavros having to make up for a small mistake by Fischer, they might be wanting to make that gamble if things change rapidly enough. But as we're watching replay of the 404 through Aqua Minerale, just getting a little bit too wide, having to take the runoff, and then do a rejoin. Yeah, it looks like again running a little bit into one of the downhill sections, just a little bit too hot.
It's very tricky through Aqua Minerale. You've got to slow down all the way through there, going through turn 11, which if it was a corner in isolation, you could take that very, very quickly indeed, but you really can't let yourself get on the outside curb there, because you've got to then try and brake, and it will just drag you to the left-hand side and off the road as it did there. So you've really got to be careful through there and very cautious, as we're about to see the 103 do. Well, a little bit wide there, but managing to just keep it on the curb in the right way and stay on the road at least. But yeah, you can get dragged to the left there very easily indeed. sent up the new tarmac which they've got on the outside there.
Yeah, it's very easy, especially with the turns like that. Anyone who's driven here through the Aqua Minerale section or at Laguna Seca, a lot of those corner exits are off camber, so meaning the track is going to slide away from you. So it's so easy to just run off, especially if you're going a little bit too hot. So drivers having to, obviously, in case of Constantinides, wanting to push and try and regain that second position, but at the same time, if you push too hard, it's so easy to go a step too far. So you have to balance that aggression versus caution. It looks like we're starting to see that dry line form a little bit as the rain dissipates within the next 5 minutes or so.
Yeah, it looks like that's the case for the moment, but how quickly is it going to dry up? We can already kind of see the dry line forming, but it's kind of visual really. But it's just where the water's more clear than in other places, I suppose, rather than it necessarily being actually dry. But yeah, it's not going to take too long. It certainly didn't at the start of the race. People even started on slicks to make sure that they were ready for it to dry up very quickly, as it did in the end. So yeah, certainly expecting this to get fully dry before the end.
Yeah, we might even see some full dry running, as now in 5 minutes they're predicting very light rain and overcast in 15. So Oscar Sandberg very much in a fairly safe condition, as he's doing a little bit of drifting, and all the way into the gravel at the Ravazza. A bit of unfortunately, I think we've done a bit of commentator's curse to him, because he seems to be beached there at the moment.
Oh dear, oh dear.
He's managing to hopefully keep it off the wall and rejoin. That's definitely going to change the dynamic now. It looks like it's just been lap traffic coming through, as the 137 is just exiting the Ravazza now. So as long as there's no damage done and it's just a little bit of dirt kicked up, the lead is still intact, although at this point a lot smaller than it was.
Well, that is a very, very big surprise. I was saying a little bit earlier how Sandberg had this one, well, not quite in the bag, but he was certainly on his way. But now he's got a lot of thinking to do over the next 40 minutes. He's got a high pressure 40 minutes coming up. Just under 7 seconds is a lot less of a manageable gap. And there you can see Grant in the background of that shot there. So the pressure is definitely on Sandberg now. And he's got a back car to deal with straight away here. 5.5 seconds is his margin. We know the McLaren is not ideal to this circuit in these conditions and so on. So this is going to be not nice for him at all.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the long wheelbase very much plays to the McLaren's advantage. But as you've said that it's maybe not the best on a bumpier track like Imola, but so far Pendergast and Sandberg handling things pretty well up until that spin on the previous lap, as maybe just getting a little bit out of shape and not getting that rhythm back. But John Chielis, his co-driver now, is just having fits like, Oscar, I don't want to be in your way again and be blue flagged, so let's get it sorted out so I can get back to my own race. It would be Gardner in the 66 there, just pulling his hair out, like, can we get some things sorted out, please? But all the while, Thomas Morant, who took the victory the previous round, is just seeing that McLaren get a little bit bigger and bigger every time on the windscreen.
Yeah, that is going to be unnerving, certainly. But yeah, a couple of mistakes, and as you said, it is exactly that. It's getting the rhythm back again after making a mistake. You've got such a comfortable lead from that situation, and we're about to see how it all unravelled for Sandberg here through the final couple of turns at Ravazza. Just turns in, and the rear end was just not with him entirely through that corner, and then while trying to correct there, just snapped the other way entirely into the gravel. It was a long time at getting into reverse and then out of it again, so he could get going. Big moment at the front of this race. Sandberg lost a lot of time there, yeah, that has really changed the face of this race. Another 3.5 seconds lost on the very next lap, so the gap's down to 3.5 seconds. I know some of that will have been down to the bad run he got onto the straight, but still, Grant is closing, and all of a sudden you can see victory once again.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because the McLaren is known, generally speaking, for being fairly strong in the wet. So I wonder if maybe just getting on the power a little bit too soon, or maybe seeing the dry line forming and deciding, oh, maybe now's the time to turn down the traction control, and it was maybe a lap or two early to be doing that. But yeah, the mistake causes the gap to now close down to about 3.2 seconds. But all the while, we have seen that Stavros Konstantinidis had pulled in a little bit of that gap between second and third, and Amundsen now bringing that gap in as well. So possibly by the time that we're close to the end of the race, we could see a few of the podium positions come up for contention again.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the rest of the field are a little bit too far away, really. There's 21 seconds to the 103 and on downwards, so I think they're a little bit too far adrift, although I would have said the same about the 137 maybe 10 minutes ago, so you never know really what can happen. As Jongen's got through on Ogard there fairly easily, really, for what is 12th place overall and 6th place in the Pro-Am category.
Yep, as the Aston definitely showing some of its some moves there in the wet and managing to make its way around the Lamborghini. And as we're now rejoining with Oscar Sandberg, who's maybe looking a little bit rattled, unfortunately, with the early spin a couple of laps ago, although managing to still keep it fairly on track with the Lexus of Serkan Duran up ahead, although I imagine Duran and Weber were both very much diving out of the way to not get in anyone's way, and cheers to them for continuing on with the race in spite of all their bad luck. But they're definitely going to want to be making a strategic exit now, as it looks like Duran is very much deciding that now is the time to lift and maybe just running it exceedingly wide to get out of the way. Although I don't think he had to go quite that far, but yeah, making the strategic exit, and now Oscar Sandberg, he's got some free air for the next little while to try and rebuild some of that lead, although right now it's sitting at about 2.5 seconds between him and Thomas Morant, and the gap back to third, which looked like it was coming down for a little while now, and it seems to be holding it just over 20 seconds, and then another 5 seconds back to Amundsen in fourth place.
Something I have seen in the YouTube chat, by the way, which has just reminded me of a rule in this championship that I saw. Those who don't change driver throughout this race, I believe, get a post-race penalty of 60 seconds. In this
20 seconds.
Oh, is it 20 seconds? Okay.
Yes, it's a 20-second penalty. So if Stavros Konstantinidis manages to pull that gap from second to third down to inside of 20 seconds, that would then give him, even though it would be third place on the road, that would give him second place, and Morant would fall back to P3 unless, of course, Amundsen brings his gap then to less than 20 seconds. And it's like those infamous track cut penalties you see in games like F1 2021, for example, where you can see those penalties accumulating on the side, and then all of a sudden somebody falls right the way down the order. Unfortunately, ACC doesn't show that quite the same way, so we can't see it right now because that's post-race applied by the stewards. But yeah, if those cars make up that gap, there's a good chance that Morant might lose it, although as the gap stands right now, 22.8 seconds, so that gap's opening up. So Morant definitely running away with it, and seems to have a safe buffer at this point.
Yeah, I did think 60 seconds would be a bit harsh, but no, it's 20 seconds, okay. So at the moment, Morant would be second, and Sandberg not really in that case under any pressure for his race lead as things stand, because obviously Morant has got to take those 20 seconds from him, but I don't think he'll want to give that one up very easily. And of course, with the Prendergast and Fisher's incident at Turn 1 all those minutes ago, is there going to be anything done about that? Quite possibly, because it did result in Fisher having a spin. So there's a lot of unknowns heading into this final half an hour.
Yeah, I think in the case of that particular incident, I think the stewards might have a look at it, but I think ultimately that'll get chalked up to being a racing incident now, as the drivers are very much doing the tire cooling procedures, running through the wet portions of the track, trying to preserve those wet tires as long as possible and seeing if they are going to make it to the end of the race. And it'd be interesting to see if any of the drivers are forced to pull the trigger on a tire change. Right now, 30 minutes left, depending on how fast that track dries up, still showing wet state right now. They might be able to keep those tires for the rest of the race, but if that moisture disappears quickly, as we're seeing the gap close in further with Moran, they might have to again do one more pit stop and swap those tires. But right now, Thomas Moran showing an incredible amount of focus right now, just not only holding fastest lap, but reeling that gap in further to Sandberg.
This is very interesting. The weather forecast once again providing some surprises, as in 15 minutes it was going to get wet again. So it doesn't look like these guys are going to have to come in after all, because the rain is going to start to fall in the very final moments of this race anyway. It's just a case of keeping the temperatures in check really over this dry period which is coming up. Although Jacobs, despite seeing that in the 404s, come in anyway.
Yeah, interesting. They're already in the pits. I wonder if maybe there was some an incident or damage, or if they're going to try and gamble it on the dries. Although I think that would be that's probably not the best gamble, especially when you're in fourth position in AM class. You wouldn't necessarily want to fall down even more positions, as it looks like Moran's now pretty much all over the back of Sandberg, and traffic coming into play. But at this point, it's very much a case of keeping those tires cool until the rain starts coming down again. Although again, the track is still in the wet state, so at least as things stand right now, maybe not having to worry about a tire change, but who manages to keep their tires in the best condition to finish off the race. And I don't know if Murat is going to be able to pull out that 20-second gap, but knowing Oscar, he's going to want to not take that win on the technicality. He's going to want to take it on the track.
Yeah, you'd expect so, and I do believe these guys are going to fight as much as possible. I think Moran is going to want to get through as quickly as possible here, because if you look at the gap between himself and the 103 car in third, he's actually losing time to that BMW because he's stuck behind this McLaren. So I think he's going to want to get through quite quickly, because let's not forget, these two, with that 20-second penalty applied to the pulse car, these two aren't really fighting at all. So there's not much point in doing this from Sandberg's point of view, although, as you say, he wants to win on the road. However, Morant will want to at least keep second in this race, and might need to take the lead to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wouldn't be entirely surprised as seeing a few small minor incidents take over on the pit wall, but I'm almost beginning to wonder if, because of the spin and with Murat closing in, Oscar is very adept at the defending positions and driving defensively. I almost begin to wonder if at this point he's thinking, you know what, rather than trying to regain that lead, why don't I see if I can hold up Thomas Murat and potentially create a situation where backing him up into his teammates and letting Stavros and Anders Amundsen catch back up, and such that he can actually force through the penalty to put Thomas Murat back down the order. A little bit of team strategy going on there. And if there's one person who has to do the defensive driving, I would say Turn1's best defensive driver is probably Oscar Sandberg.
It'll be harsh, but they might well go for it. They might well do it. Really, Sandberg, as I mentioned earlier, finished fourth. Well, that car at least finished fourth in the first race, and to be able to take a few points away from this car that won the first race would be very, very helpful indeed. So yeah, it's very possible that he'll try his best to slow up the BMW behind, so going to the chicane again. But yeah, you can see behind there everybody searching for a little bit of wet track space just to keep these tyre temperatures in check, which is the most difficult part of all of this at the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. As we're now seeing the track state evolve to damp, we're seeing that the overcast conditions are going to continue for the next 5-10 minutes or so. But in 15, that rain has changed from light rain to full-blown medium-ish rain. And although the track temp has gone up a little bit because of the drying condition as of right now, it looks like with 27 minutes 45 seconds here to go, be interesting to see, is that rain going to be the saving grace for the 105 car, or is it potentially going to cause more mistakes will be interesting to see. But yeah, as of right now, with Sandberg currently holding up Morant in the 137, that gap, well, it seems to be fairly static at the moment, but with things closing down into the 27-minute mark, things are starting to close up again.
Yeah, they are. And for third, actually, Amundsen's making a bit of progress there. But Sandberg certainly looks like he wants to defend this one right till the end. Morant is obviously going to get that penalty, but he's losing time at the moment and would like to get through in the McLaren. It's so narrowed into turn two. Well, this actually is into the first chicane. So can't make a dive really, and he's going to stick behind for now. Not going to like the way that Sandberg is defending at the moment, because it's costing them both time, and that is hurting Morant very, very badly in this race. He needs to keep that 20-second margin on third and fourth. He could very easily finish off the podium here if he's not careful.
Yeah, as they're pretty much running nose to tail now, as they're going through Tosa, there's a good chance, especially if well, it depends really on is Constantinis and Amundsen able to pull that gap close, but with Amundsen gaining on in the 100, gaining on the 103 as the gap's down by approx 4/10, I believe, if I remember correctly. They are slowly starting to pull in, so as long as there's not huge traffic concerns or something like that, or potentially a mistake from Sandberg, there's a good chance that those other turn one cars could pull within that 20-second penalty window, and it doesn't matter if Morant is across the line in second position, but just because of that post-race penalty, he's unfortunately going to lose it, as now both cars very much going offline, cool those tires down so that they can last for about 15 minutes until the rain starts to come down again.
Yes, it's very tricky, and as you can see, it's very dry out there at the moment. More than 5 minutes to go until this rain comes again, and they'll be really hoping that it does, to be honest, because, well, I was saying earlier on, Sandberg defending from Morant, taking those lines, but he's also looking for water, by the looks of things, looking for the dampness on the outside of the road to try and keep those tyres cool, but it's a real struggle at the moment.
Yep, as we're seeing the track is still staying at the damp condition, at least so far. Yes, we're seeing at least Oscar Sandberg taking a quick splash of cool water on offline, but Morant is not so much. I wonder if maybe he's decided that to try and gain that position, he's going to risk overcooking those wet weather tires, or if maybe he's not running into temperature concerns as much as the McLaren is right now. But it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. But yeah, both drivers, at least as they're heading up for the Piratella corner, they both decided to take a quick splash of cool water, and yeah, it seems like the gap has eased or has maintained itself at least a little bit over the past 2 sectors now. So I wonder if maybe Morant's lost the ability to push at the moment.
Yeah, quite possibly, or just doesn't want to, because they've still got more than 5 minutes to go here in these conditions, and you don't want to overdo it now, because what can you do to cool down your tyres once you push them over the edge like that? There's really not much at this stage. So yeah, you do want to keep them in check, as Amundsen is starting to make some progress and maybe try and get onto the podium here for the second time this season. Second place at Silverstone, looking for a third, maybe the best he can get here today, after Solberg having a not great start to this race, getting spun around. I think it was all the way the very second turn of the race getting turned around.
Yeah, it looks like Constantinis maybe struggling a little bit in that BMW, not quite able to get it sorted. The gap between second and third was up to close to 24 seconds. It looks like back end going out a little bit on the button of 3. Stavros really having a bit of a struggle with it right now, and with Amundsen very much having the run, I'm wondering if maybe there's going to be another teammate tap on the shoulder, as if you're having a bit of a struggle, you know, let us go so we can at least get on the podium and close some of that gap down. I think the 100 car is definitely going to be eyeing up that second position if they can pull that gap in, with Morant being stuck behind Sandberg right now.
Yeah, 2 battles going on for the podium place at the moment, which is good to see. But yeah, just over 20 minutes to settle them, and Arguably the one for third is a little bit more meaningful because those two positions will actually change after the checkered flag, but these two likely wouldn't unless Sandberg makes another mistake, which he did earlier, I suppose. So you never know. Morant has got to push him as hard as possible to try and make that happen.
Yep, as we're seeing Morant obviously very much back into push mode as he was staying on the racing line as opposed to Sandberg, who was going off again to give those tires a bit of a temperature quenching to keep them from overheating. Although now it's gone from the forecast showing slight bit of sun back to cloud and the light rain now in 5 minutes. So things are definitely progressing back into the rainy and wet direction. So things are damp right now and likely to at least pretty much stay moist and go back to rain again. But if there's one thing that definitely isn't getting cooled off, it's this battle here for a P1 on track right now.
Yeah, it certainly isn't. Right now into turn one again, but nothing doing really. And it's so narrow. We said it earlier, Brian, it's so narrow going into that first chicane that you can do. And in the past, when we have seen side-by-side battles involving this McLaren, it's got a little bit too close for comfort. So yeah, I don't think either of these two were really going to put their cars on the line here for this battle, given the situation there. Despite the fact it is for the lead, you know about the penalties and whatever. That's going to slightly take the heat off this battle, ever so slightly. As I say, I don't think either of them are going to quite put their cars on the line for it.
Yeah, I think at this point, I think Thomas Morant is probably thinking if he has the opportunity to make the move, he's definitely going to try and go for it. But at the same time, you just can't really send it in the wet conditions because it's so easy to go off track. But he's definitely going to want to try and make that, get that position for the lead because he's obviously got the pace right now to pull away from Sandberg, but because he's not able to make that move right now, he's very much looking at that overall relative and thinking it's like, well, I would really want to get away right now because he's going to be looking at the fact that there's the 103 and the 100, two other turn one cars potentially within striking distance of taking that position away from him. Speaking of those two turn one cars, Amundsen now pretty much all over the back of turn one teammate Stavros Konstantinidis, and we're going to want to try and make that move as soon as possible, but also not wanting to make it too dangerous because the last thing you want to do is be that one who takes out your teammate. As that 103 again, maybe taking a few too many liberties at Variante Alta.
Yeah, certainly might get a strike for that. We've already seen drive through earlier on for his teammate. For going over the limits, as we see Amundsen having a look through the final corner, and I think would have been given the space there had he gone for it, but didn't decide to. It's all going to happen down into the first chicane.
Yep, if they've got the run down the main straight, looks like Amundsen's probably going to have the run on Konstantinidis there, and looks like he's going to leave the door open because obviously teammate, you don't want to be shutting the door on them. Yep, as there's the nice clean position exchange, as a little bit of team courtesy, just they've got the run, and they've obviously got the pace right now, so Stavros just going to let Anders go and let him try and chase down the 137 and take away that second place from Thomas Morant.
Now, yeah, he's got a big chance as Amundsen now because the gap's only 23 seconds. Morant is being held up by Sandberg, arguably at this stage, and I think Amundsen can reel him in. So or at least, well, I don't mean reel in the whole 23 seconds. That would be quite ludicrous, but he might be able to get within that 20 seconds that would allow him to get up into second and finish in exactly the same place they did at the Silverstone race. This time beating out the Pulse car, so I think there is a big opportunity for him here. We'll see how the next few laps develop as we see the forecast at the top of our screen. 18 minutes to go, but it's not going to be raining for that much of it, so these tyres are going to be on the limit by the end.
Yeah, absolutely. There's in 5 minutes we're going to see looks like about approximately medium rain, as the track has evolved to greasy now, but in 15 minutes after that it's going to be back to overcast, so it'll be interesting to see just how much water accumulates on the track. Does it get all the way to the wet state? Does it just remain damp? And are the guys churning up quite enough to actually get it to the green stage, in which case the wet tires are going to be absolutely screaming for mercy at that point. But it looks like, based on whether being what it is right now, that those tires are going to get some very much needed relief, as Morant now looking for any avenue to maybe force a mistake from Sandberg, just showing the nose anywhere he can at this point.
Well, I think he has to, given what's happened behind with Amundsen. Still 23 seconds though, nothing really changing on the last lap between the two of them. Two temps actually lost for the 100. So not much there, but Morant is going to want to get through, and there's the rain again.
Yep,
the rain is starting to fall once more, and these guys are going to be quite glad about that. But how long is this going to go on for? At least 5 minutes, we can see.
Yep, with going for light rain now, with heavy rain or heavier rain expected in 5 minutes. I think it's more like medium rain will be coming down, but this track will go from greasy back to damp and maybe all the way to wet, depending on how hard that rain's going to be coming down for the next 5 minutes or so. But it would be really interesting to see is Morant going to maybe try and make that move now, since he's going to have to do it before while he's still got the pace, as we're now seeing the track state tick over to damp. It's going to be interesting. Is Morant going to try and make that move? Is he going to have the ability to make that move? Because obviously, with Imola being so narrow, he's right all over the back of that diffuser, and maybe going to try and hang it around the outside. Who's going to be the last of the late breakers? Yeah, Oscar's just got that position set up perfectly. Just no room for Morant to actually make that move, as the track is now moving into a wetter state, and now it's on Edmondson and to a certain extent Constantinis to actually reel in that gap on Morant, as he's just absolutely fighting to try and get either shake Sandberg's confidence or shake his focus or something, anything to get around at this point.
Yeah, he's trying everything at this stage, although the gap's still not coming down. And so, he might decide in this case, well, actually, maybe I won't risk it, because staying in a line like this might be quicker than me actually attempting a move, because that's not again, it could go wrong. And if it does go wrong enough, then he might well lose 2 places and be off the podium if he's not careful. So it's a very difficult balancing act that he's got to do right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough position, because at least on the last lap, there was Morant was 2/10 faster than Sandberg, but he's not really got a chance to do much with it, and Edmondson 3/10 off of Sandberg's pace. So it'll be interesting to see if they can manage to pull that in. I don't think, at least from what the timetable's been showing so far, with 14 and a half minutes left, Morant's probably going to be able to hold on to that position, but down at 22.7 second gap, although I believe that is an old interval. We're going to have to wait and see how things change as they're coming across the timeline now. Looks like a 1:49.5 for Oscar Sandberg, a 1:49.7. As Morant maybe overcooks it a little bit through the Tamburello chicane, it's going to get a little bit of relief for Sandberg, at least for the time being. But yes, Morant 2/10 behind Sandberg's pace, and Amundsen takes a couple of tenths out of both of them, so it looks, at least for now, like that gap might finally start to close in, but I don't think Morant is in danger of losing his podium position, as Constantini is just unfortunately not able to keep the pace with them right now. So that third place is probably safe, at least for the time being, as we're now seeing a replay of the fisticuffs into Tamburello. Yeah, it looks like Morant maybe wanted to make that move, maybe make the switchback, and just overcooks it a little bit, and obviously you can't make an overtake while you're off the track.
Well, no, I think he was just avoiding clattering into the back of the McLaren, to be honest, which would have been worse. But either way, that's what I meant earlier on about the balancing act. Got to get it right. Maybe in hindsight, sticking behind have been the best choice. Well, maybe, but everyone's a genius afterwards. It's you just want to get through as a driver. You just want to get through. But either way, it looked like Morant was braking too late for that corner. Overtake or not, it just looked like he was going deep, whatever was going to happen there. And so, just had to run across the gravel. It was probably more sensible than trying to trail brake a little bit too much, turning a bit late and ended up spinning. That would have been worse.
Yeah, by the looks of it, he was very much in that situation where it was going to be contact into the rear quarter panel, and that's for the trailing driver. That's that the fault pretty much lies squarely with you. So, in that case, just taking to the gravel and being safest to not take the other driver out was the more. Obviously, you don't get the position, and it makes puts you very much on the back foot. But obviously, very much the much more sporting decision to make, and to not going into the back of your rival.
Yes, better for everybody that.
And so, as we're now going down to the last 11.5 minutes, the positions are still very much where they are, with Oscar Sandberg in lead, followed by Thomas Morant in P2 in 137 car. Third place, Anders Amundsen has managed to, him and Jules Solberg, after some first lap dramas, managing to get all the way back into those podium positions. The 103 car, which was looking pretty strong at the beginning of the race, with Gert Fischer, now with Stavros Konstantinis in the car. Unfortunately, Stavros having a little bit of a struggle and down into fourth position. So, fortunately for those two in the 103, maybe not quite having the pace that they had at the start of the race. And in fifth, the 911 of Sonky B. In fifth place, and after rounding out the top five, still a surprisingly good showing from the 28 with Chris Stevenson and Henry Handy rounding out the pro positions. Then down into M class, we have Michael Hutchinson currently in the lead, taking over from, I believe, Bryant, who was there initially. And then in second position in the M class, P8 overall, Adam Gardner taking over for John Cheel in 66th. And then in ninth position, in third place overall, rounding out the M class podium in the 101, we have AJ Jones for Turn1 SSR. And then to round out the top 10, we have Hedda Rangsetter in the 104. Is fourth in M class and rounding out the top 10. So that is your top 10 running order, and well, things are pretty much at the status quo, at least for the moment. We'll do another quick sponsor shout out, Turn1, for providing the YouTube channel, Simsport Solutions, with the magic and producer Steve behind the cameras and making all of these lovely pictures happen. We have Sim Racing GP providing the servers, and the experts over at JCP 600, the Exile Virtual Motorsports community, and one of our title sponsors, contributors, with Boonatix, who has just dropped the official wireframe for the brand new BMW M4. So if you're looking to make some fantastic liveries for that new car, you have the official wireframe, not the one that was leaked earlier that some people have been making liveries with, but the actual new one, which apparently gives you some lovely little added bonuses exactly of what are the surfaces that you're going to be having to look at primarily for doing things like your fancy artwork, painting, decal work, and other things. So definitely check those out as we join the action. With Sandberg now apparently looks like he's pulling out close to a 1 second gap. Morant has not hasn't brought that gap back in after running wide at Tamburello.
Yeah, I think this gap between everybody is probably the best idea, really, in terms of the actual outcome. Sandberg has got no pressure here, really, or very little. Morant is going to be able to drive at his own pace and keep Amundsen at bay. Gap just under 22 seconds, but obviously needs to remain or keep at least 20 of those seconds to carry in a second. And I think the best way of him doing that is not by hounding the back of Sandberg, it is by driving at this distance. Whether he's there intentionally or not, obviously he's not, but it is certainly helpful for him. I would have said, and they may well. They may well finish like this, to be honest, with Amundsen pulling away from the 103 as well. But we've got some reoccurring themes at the front of the field, which is good to see. Heading into Suzuka, we'll certainly know who to look out for.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going with 7.5 minutes left in 5 minutes time, or potentially less. The rain is going to stop, but the track state is wet. So I'm wondering if Moran is maybe hoping, because he really had the pace as the track was drying, if he's going to hope for that last couple of laps charge on Sandberg if things keep the way they do. Because I have a feeling that maybe part of the reason why there was some issues is we see Henry Handy going for a bit of a spin. Oh, the double 360 there, getting the car back on track. Doesn't look like he's going to lose any positions, at least not in classes. He was well behind the fifth place 911 car, with still a fairly decent interval to Hutchinson in P7 and man lead. So a little bit of drama, but no positional change. So yes, as things are standing right now, I'm wondering if maybe that it's that last minute charge that Moran is thinking of. It maybe it won't necessarily give him the victory, because he would have to pull out again 20 seconds on Sandberg for him to keep that keep the win. But I wonder if maybe if there's just enough time left, he might decide to see if get a little bit of bragging rights and at least be P1 on the road. Yes, looks like Henry Handy through, I believe that was Tamburello, just getting a little bit too excited going through the initial part of the chicane, and then jumping on the power to try and right the car and just over-rotating it.
A nice recovery from the second spin though, to be able to get back around like that. But yeah, only 3 laps to go at the line for these guys now, and Moran really just have to be looking over his shoulder here. Only 21 seconds. He's going to be taking a hit of 20, let's not forget, as we keep mentioning, and that gap is continually coming down. He is under a bit of pressure here on his second place. Certainly looks like Konstantin is just struggling a little bit and won't be able to overtake Moran with that 20 seconds, but Amundsen definitely can here. Only 1.1 seconds between them.
Yeah, as the gap is now at 21.113 seconds, there's definitely the possibility that Amundsen could close that gap just enough that he gets inside of Moran's 20-second penalty window. Is getting a little bit taking a little bit too much curb there, at least as the track state is still wet and still at light rain. Although by the end of the race, I don't think there's just going to be enough time of no rain that the track state is going to evolve so much that Moran is going to have that pace. If anything, right now, I think this is probably the time when Amundsen is really going to want to try and push to get inside that 20-second window of the penalty that Moran's going to be facing. But yeah, given the rate at which the track has been drying, at least so far this evening, I just, even though the forecast is saying, we're going back to overcast, I just don't see it evolving to the point where we're going to see any sort of drastic change. It's very much going to be, is Sandberg going to be able to keep the car on track, keep Mark behind him, and with the gap now down to 20.8, can Amundsen close it in? Because as of right now, it's pretty dicey. 4 minutes left. It's anyone's call.
It really is, and there's only two laps to go at the end of this one. So it's very much in the balance. But yeah, I agree. We're too late in the race now for any kind of tyre change. There's no doubt about that at this stage, even with a torrential downpour.
And the rain has now stopped, as viewers can now see on their screens. The rain has stopped, but the track state is still very much in the wet window.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have to be suffering through that, but I don't even think it's going to be suffering through it very much, really. The track's not going to get that dry. They're going to have to search for a little bit of wet patches towards the end of the last lap, maybe. But it's really not going to be too much of a factor for the remaining 2 laps.
Yep, with 3 minutes 15 seconds left to go, it's just as we're seeing the gap now at about 20.6 seconds between Moran and Amundsen. Very much push for Anders in that 100 car, trying to close down that gap, but if anything, the gap is pretty much increased. So I don't know that Thomas Moran has a problem right now, although the gap is increasing to Sandberg. I think it's just at this point, it's a situation of relax, don't try and over push the car and risk having a serious problem, but at the same time he's going to want to at least keep up the pace so that he doesn't have that penalty go in and bite him further.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very intense situation for them both to be in, even though they're not on the circuit together at the moment. Very high intensity, as we see the 103, and I wonder if they've underfueled quite possibly.
Yeah, this that's very peculiar. Seeing the 103 pulling into the pits. Yeah, I'm thinking maybe there was a little bit of underfueling going on, and Stavros is now going to have to do a splash and dash on the last lap to bring it home. But that moves the 911, driven by Song Kibi, started by Willem Weyrich, pulling up into fourth place. So at least for now, there's yes, Turn 1 cars are very much holding 5 of the top 6 positions, but yeah, we'll see if Konstantinis can get it back out. No, Hutchinson now takes over P6 with the 103 being in the pit lane, potentially having to refuel.
Yeah, it's a real shame for the 103. We mentioned it's a long pit lane. That seems like a very long stop as well. Really, he's back going again now, but that's a very long stop. It won't be for tyres, that'd be ludicrous. But I don't know quite what's going on there, and it's another disappointment for them really, because they're going to finish behind Pro-Am cars for the second race in a row now. That's what happened to them towards the end of the Silverstone race. They ended up 7th in the overall standings behind 2 Pro-Am cars. They are going to be 7th again by the looks of things, but behind only 1 Pro-Am car on this occasion. So yeah, still not particularly good for them, and they've got the 66 right behind them at the moment. So Gardner might even overtake them here on the final lap.
Yeah, I can imagine what might have happened if they suddenly had a situation where they absolutely had to change a tire compound, or if they got a flat spot, or what might have happened, or if they had I'd be very surprised if they suddenly had a puncture. But yeah, with about 35 seconds left to go in the race, Sandberg still very much out in front. The gap is at 20.6 seconds back to Edmondson. So as of right now, Thomas Murat has just got just enough of a lead that he's not going to lose that position. But as things stand right now, you know, it's just the tiniest little mistake, only half a second, and Thomas Murat could lose that. Or if we've seen Oscar Sandberg now, if he's making one minor error, could that hand at least P1 on track over. But as the time ticks down now, white flag flying, no surrenders, but that does mean the last lap. So I think this might mean that as Sandberg crosses the line, this should be checkered flag, if I remember the rule book correctly. Yeah. So by the looks of it, 20.4 seconds, it's going to be close. So as Sandberg goes across the line, giving it a little bit of a victory flash as he crosses the line, there's the checkered flag. As he goes across, Thomas Murat in P2, at least for the moment. There's Anders Edmondson coming through the Ravazza. Is he going to be close enough? Maybe. Let's see where he's at. As he's coming across the line now, flagman waving the checkered flag as some of the back markers go through. 20.2, just 2/10 off of that time. So it looks like Thomas Murat is going to be holding on to that second place position. Well done from the 137 car, showing incredible poise and focus, doing the full 2 hours and bringing it home with the podium position and that 20-second penalty. Then as the 911 Porsche comes across the line within the hands of Sanki B, we are going to be seeing Turn 1 cars finishing 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then a lap down in 7th position. Michael Hutchinson coming across the line, 1st place for the AM class in the number 9 car. Then we are, as we mentioned, Stavros Konstantinidis with Garrett Fisher finishing 7th, Adam Gardner in 8th place, AJ Jones and in 101 car in 9th position, Heather Sitter in 10th position. 325 car finishes in 11th positions. In 12th position, the 404 of Sander Jacobs and then Alex Gooding in the 187 in 13th position. Ogard in 14th position in that lone Lamborghini that's unfortunately just had nothing but drama today. And in final position, the Lexus driven by Sirkandaran and Weber. So that is your race results. So we're now going to be dragging the winning team in. So you'll have to pardon with us for just a moment, as we're going to have to do some minor audio swaps. So don't panic when you for that brief moment of silence. We're now here with our race winners, Kieran Pendergast and Oscar Sandberg, and the 105 McLaren. Guys, that was quite the race. Looked like a little bit of cool, calm gap management from Kieran, and then some minor dramas with Oscar in the Ravazza. So can you tell us a little bit about your race? We'll start with Kieran.
Yeah, the start of the race was really good. We wanted to just make sure that those first couple laps were very tentative, and we didn't want to get involved in any incidents or anything. It was tough to start on the slicks, and big shout out to Oscar on the strategy at the start of the race, making the call and to stay on slicks, because originally I was going to go on the wets, and obviously that would have been a bit of a shambles. But yeah, I'm really happy with the first stint, and obviously Oscar bringing it home as well.
And it was an interesting strategy call. We were thinking everyone was going to be starting on the wets, but then when we noticed that there's the big bright yellow Pirelli stripe on those tires of both yourself and the 103 starting on dries, that was, I guess, very much the correct call. And well done to yourself for just perfect gap management all the way to the pit window. So well done. And moving over to your teammate Oscar. Showcasing obviously some amazing defensive driving through most of the race, but just the one minor error in the Ravazza. So how was that second stint for you?
Oh, it was quite good actually, except of maybe the one where I tried to kill Kirian, get him a heart attack. It's normally I do it a little easier than this time. No, he drove an amazing stint, and our strategy calls and everything was just spot on. So it was not an easy job to bring it home, because Thomas was straight behind us, but we also knew that he would get the 20-second penalty because he drove it solo. So somehow we had a little gap on that, but of course the fight was good, and I think I start to get in love with a new car here.
Yeah, absolutely. We know how much you enjoyed driving the Bentley, and we thought everyone was going to be going with the M4 with it being new hotness. So I don't know, as someone who shared a Ferrari with you for a while, is the mid-engine starting to grow on you?
Yeah, I think so. I think, to be honest, I think the future of general GT3 will go more to mid-engine, because it's a better concept of the car, and in the real world too. And we see more and more factories are changing to this. Of course, the traditional front engine cars is still, I would say, not my favorite, but maybe more likable. For example, send it over the curbs and things like this. This car doesn't really like that. So I had a quite strong voice in my ear for 50 minutes that don't put it in first gear, don't touch the curb, be careful, and things like that. So I had a very strong teacher or coach with me today, you can say, or best of it all, a teammate. And it's interesting, because it's nice to end my relationship with Turn1 as a P1.
Yeah, this interesting for sure, as we're as someone who's had Oscar very much in the ear, going, do this instead of that, and seeing that change of position or change of role, as it were. That's very interesting and quite amusing to hear. So well done for the race this evening, guys. Very well done. And we'll move over to our winners here. So again, Kieran, Oscar, thank you very much, and good luck for the next round. So as we're going to move over to Martin Bryan and Michael Hutchinson, welcome to the booth, Martin and Michael. Well done on your first place in the AM class this evening. Tell us a little bit about your race, and we'll start with Martin, since you were the first in the car.
Yeah, it was a good race. I just got a really good start. I think there was a couple of incidents at the start with a few of the guys in front, and I managed to avoid all that and get the traction control up on full, and then keep the car on the track in the rain.
Yeah, so it looks like you had some very dicey moments there, especially with the 100 car trying to make up some lost ground. Were you guys lucky and able to stay unscathed in those first opening lap dramas, or were you having to do a little bit of battling back yourselves?
No, there wasn't too much battling. I think we were pushed by number 66, which was Gardner, and his teammate. I can't remember who it was, but he pushed us a little bit. But then other than that, we managed to build a gap after the pit stop, and then that was when we pitted onto the wets, and then we managed to increase the gap when we pitted on when we've done the driver change.
Okay. Well, excellent job. And moving over to your teammate, Michael, seemed, at least from the broadcasting standpoint, a rather uneventful stint. Was it just a matter of just keep a consistent bang in those laps and just try to bring it home, or was there maybe something we might have missed that caused a bit of those hairy moments?
No, it was exactly that. Really, bit of a boring one, but I'm definitely not complaining about that at Imola in the wet. Some of them curbs and the elevation change can really catch you out, especially with the changing weather conditions. So yeah, it really was a case of just getting the car, keep it on the track, and Martin was keeping me updated that we're quite far ahead of our opponents. So yeah, it was really just get it round. I think Henry Handy came out the pit just behind us, so I was hoping to stay ahead of him. That would have been nice, but I made a mistake on my second lap out and went into the gravel, so he got past just after there. So, and then after there, it was just simple, really, just keep it on.
Yeah, sounds like, if anything, that probably was kind of one of those races where, you can just sit back, relax, bring it home, and by the sounds of it, just keep that composure, which you absolutely did, other than the one minor thing. But since it wasn't a class battle, just as you said, bring it around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah.
Well, well done, Michael and Martin. Two very fairly consistent drives, managing to avoid the drama. So we'll let you two go.
Yes, and then. Yeah, I just want to say thanks. As always, thanks for the stream, guys. It's always excellent. So keep up the great work. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Look forward to watching it back.
Yep, thanks very much, guys. We'll bid you adieu, and good luck for both the next solo round as well as the next team round, as we'll move towards the end of the broadcast now. So we have coming up is obviously, as we mentioned, round 3 of the team event, which is coming up on March the 8th at Suzuka. That'll be the final round. I don't know if you're going to be hearing from me or not. We'll see how my teammate is feeling. But coming up next week, we have the round 7 and 8 double header on the 22nd. That is going to be at Hungaroring. So that is the 30-minute double sprint race coming up there. So will we see some Hamilton-Alonso style battling? Who knows? Then on March 1st, round 9 at Zandvoort. Remember, it is the old configuration, still in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And then for round 10, final round on March 15th at Spa-Francorchamps. So that is the remaining race schedule. And of course, before we leave, a quick thank you to Ewan for joining me this evening here in the commentary booth, as giving Aaron, who's going to be back hopefully next week, a break for his birthday. So if you join us again next week, give Aaron a happy birthday. But thanks for joining me in the booth today, Ewan. And also in the man behind the magic, I should say, from Simsport Solutions, producer Steve. And a quick shout out and thank you to Sim Racing GP for providing the servers, Turn1 for providing the YouTube channel, and of course the experts over at JCT 600, the exiled virtual motorsports community, and lastly our other content creator and contributor Boondatix. Thank you all very much. Thanks very much for joining us here on the YouTube channel this evening. We'll see you next time.